Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. Boxing Realist here, as you guys know. So today we're going to do a little bit of an interesting video. The last few videos that I have posted have related to either that of Miss Naoya Inoue or Terence Crawford, and I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about that because I have received a certain amount of comments, especially with one of my most recent videos with that of a Terence Crawford. And I also wanted to talk about Mr. Naoya Inoue, as well as the possibility of him fighting Mr. Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez. Mr. John Sean Boxing already joined in. What's up, brother? He says Bud, Usyk, and Inoue are 1A, 1B, 1C, in my opinion. Yes, because of course, for those of you that do not see the title, that is who's better, Terence Crawford, Inoue, or Oleksandr Usyk. Cannot completely disagree with that analysis. Salute, brother. I'm glad to have you on the podcast here. I pretty much agree with that statement. I think that all three are great. I want to really get into especially some of the most recent comments on my most recent video with the Terence Crawford. Does he have a weaker resume? Because I had so many comments, at least for one of my more recent videos on that. And there was just a lot of comments that I thought needed to be addressed there. But yeah, what's up, Mr. BR? What is up, sir? I am glad to have you all here. Mr. Assassin XYZ11 says, I don't think Inoue gets enough props for all the things he did in the lower weight classes. That's a debate. I think that at times that can definitely be a little bit of a debate. There are some wins, in my personal view, that actually one could debate is a bit underrated. Like Jamie McDonald kind of is a win that, although I don't know for sure if I would call it A grade, it's kind of a debate because people kind of forget he actually did have a couple really good wins in his career. I think that he beat that one Mexican Japanese dude who was pretty talented a couple times. Of course, it was kind of debatable. But anyway, Jaime Raiden, what's up, brother? He says, what's up, Mr. BR? Jaime Raiden, salute. Absolutely. Salute to all you guys who are here. Absolutely love all you guys who are here. Mike Rodriguez 757, says Usyk the best, took more risk, fought guys that were bigger than him. Bud never did that, and Inoue still working on his resume. So I say Usyk, then Bud, then Inoue. That's actually not completely unfair. One thing that I always have given credit to certain fighters for was when they actually have fought bigger guys. Anyone who knows me knows that that I have given a lot of credit to fighters who have oftentimes fought bigger opponents, and also lesser credit to fighters who I felt were kind of way below. Let me just check my audio real quick here. Let me just check it on the laptop. Okay. I do think my audio looks good here. Okay. Awesome. All right. So let's take a look at my last video here because I want to take a look at a lot of the comments here. Because anytime I make a video about Terence Crawford, especially about his resume, I always just get comments from both fucking ends, and I get a lot of comments from Terence Crawford fans that highly disagree with me. Then I get people who go on the other side of the fucking spectrum and then try to say that, Crawford's not an all-time great, and I can't necessarily go either way. But anyway, so let's get into this. So Assassin says nobody gave Usyk a chance. As soon as he moved to heavyweight, his boxing skills were heavily dismissed. As soon as he made the move from cruiserweight to heavyweight, that actually is a very good point. I myself did not favor him over AJ Anthony Joshua nor Tyson Fury, especially Tyson Fury. I did not favor him over Tyson Fury. So the fact that he was able to do that, and I don't think, especially a lot of the channels that excuse me, that I used to review, so many of the channels that I used to review, they used to, kind of think that Usyk was just going to be a bystander in the weight class, maybe be like one or two guys, maybe get his hand on one belt. But I don't think anyone at first thought he was actually going to beat the two best heavyweights of his era in AJ Anthony Joshua and Fury. And take a look overall at how good Danny Dubois has recently become. So, yeah, but let's see. So let's see this first comment. This man says, I've thought Boots was the truth 5 hits ago. I do worry that he plays around too much, staying in the pocket. If Boots just had more patience and was less aggressive like Crawford, he'd be better than Bud. But who knows? He may never reach the IQ of Bud, and that alone make him not as dominant. Um, I think Jerome Boots Ennis is very talented, especially athletically. He's a very talented fighter. So the reason why that's an important comment is because for anyone who did not watch my most recent video, and I'll get to your guys' comments in a minute. I have some very interesting comments in these comment sections. And I can tell that like some guys like they purposely made their names to just for my like just to comment on my channel, which is hilarious, but love that. That's pretty cool. Anyways, that overall being stated, so the reason why that was an important distinction was because Breadman Edwards, and I was reacting to a video by Bruce Vane, and he was trying to make a point that Breadman Edwards, because he's from Philly, he wanted to try to make it seem like Crawford needs to defeat Jerome Boots Ennis in order to be an all-time great. And that's not really what he stated. All he stated was that, if Crawford was actually able to beat Jerome Boots Ennis, he'd be the greatest of all time. Now, the reason why this is an important comment is because people were stating, well, if Crawford were to come back and beat Jerome Boots Ennis, it would basically be like if Ali were able to beat Larry Holmes back then. It would be like if Mayweather, when he was 39 years old, came back and beat Terence Crawford. So basically, you guys get it. It's like if, the best of that particular generation or of those weight classes especially came back and beat the guy at around those weight classes. That's what it would be like. And he was trying to make the point of, well, we don't know how good Boots is. And I guess that's true to a degree, but let's be real. We all more than likely know that Jerome Boots Ennis is the next guy up. So, I mean, people keep trying to, make all these excuses. It would be a humongous win. Now, does Crawford, in my view, have to do that in order to be an all-time great level fighter? No. But that's also going to bring us the next thing. Crawford is not known as a guy that has the deepest of resumes. And this isn't just me saying that. This isn't just, the quote-unquote racist, non-black fans saying that. And I'm not claiming that, once again, that there are not racial or racist non-black fans against Crawford or black fighters. I'm not claiming that because, of course, there are of all demographics. But the point is that the Crawford fans especially love to use this as an excuse. They love to say this about, oh, well, Crawford was blackballed. And Crawford was never really blackballed, but we're going to get into that. And I'm also probably also going to talk about that as the video goes along. But let's see. They're all busy beating up Crawford's arse. Well, yeah, I agree with that. Crawford is a great fighter. But when Stephen Breadman Edwards stated that Crawford, although he's an all-time great level fighter, his resume is a little bit more thin than some of the other guys like Sugar Ray Robinson or Mayweather. He's absolutely correct. Now, Sugar Ray Robinson, I'm not going to completely comment on because he's a little bit older than what I've studied. But if you compare him to guys like Sugar Ray Leonard, for example, or, Mayweather or Pacquiao or even Roberto Duran, yeah, his resume is pretty thin. And that doesn't mean necessarily that he's not a great fighter. He is a fantastic fighter. You can be, in my view, an all-time great level fighter, but still your resume be a little bit thin. And this is why in the video I stated that Crawford to me is very similar to a Rocky Marciano. Now, anyone who knows my channel knows that I give Rocky Marciano a whole lot of credit. He is debatably in my top 20 fighters of all time. I don't know if I would put him quite in my top 10 because I just don't know if his resume is quite there. One thing that Crawford has on his side is that at least he was within like 5 different weight classes. And he also is the only fighter to become undisputed in 3 separate weight classes to what I know, at least during this modern era within that of the 4-belt era. So that's something that he probably has a slight edge over Marciano on. But this is the thing. Like when we take a look at Terence, he only has 6 A grade level wins. I've told people this for many, many years. And when you take a look at his wins, I think they're quite apparent which wins they are. You have Gamboa, and once again, I'll get to your comments here in a minute, guys. I appreciate it. You have Yuriorkis Gamboa, you have Victor Postal, you have Sean Porter, you have Israel Madrimov, you have Errol Spence, and you have Canelo Alvarez. Now, why did I compare Terence Crawford to Rocky Marciano? Because Rocky oftentimes, I think that he can be a bit underrated, especially. And Crawford, I think, is a little bit of the opposite. I think that when people take a look at Rocky Marciano, I think that they underrate him to a degree at this point because I think they assume that all the fighters that he just fought up were completely washed. And I'm not stating that maybe all of them were at the best point, but a lot of them were at a pretty decent point. Like when you take a look at Jersey Joe Walcott, Ezra Charles, Archie Moore, they definitely, other than Ezra Charles, they definitely were a little bit older, but they still were at a very good point. Joe Louis is the only one I would state was definitely a little bit past it. But that's why I say when you take a look at Rocky, you wouldn't really like, and it's similar with Terence Crawford. You wouldn't really claim that the Sean Porter that Terence Crawford fought, that it was the best version of Sean Porter ever. You wouldn't claim that the version of Canelo that he fought was really a prime or peak version of Canelo. You wouldn't claim that the version of Errol Spence that he fought probably was an absolute peak version of Spence, but it still could be debated that they were a top pound for pound level guy. So that's why I stated that they're similar to Rocky Marciano for me. Now, of course, Casey Cook, and I've had this, girl comment in my comment section before. Of course, she got all racialized about it. But Rocky Marciano is someone to me that I hold in very high regard. And I hold Terence Crawford in very high regard. But they're looked at as a little bit different. And I think not only because they're a part of different eras, but let's also be real here. I think that certain Caucasian fighters are probably held in lesser esteem. And I get that maybe to a certain degree, but Rocky Marciano especially, I think he deserves a great amount of credit. Crawford is someone that I think is going to be looked at in greater esteem because he is a Black American fighter, and I think many people will take a look at that and say, okay, well, he's right up there with Whitaker. He's right up there with Mayweather. And it doesn't always necessarily mean that you're up there with those guys. And don't get me wrong, I think that Crawford is right there, probably with guys like Pernell Whitaker and, guys like that. But the question is he right there with guys like Sugar Ray Leonard and other guys like that? We're going to talk about that. And this is also the question, and we're going to get more into this. Does he have the resume of Oleksandr Usyk, and is he eventually going to have the resume of an Inoue? Because in a way, I don't think that he has quite the resume of an Usyk or a Crawford right now. But if Inoue actually were able to fight Bam Bam Rodriguez, and we're going to get into that, and if he were able to somehow wipe out 126, or even if he were able to, let's just say, fight Nick Bull, Brandon Figueroa, Bruce Shushu Carrington, and Angelo Leo, one would have to debate that he already has a better resume than Crawford if he was able to do that. And I understand that a lot of people are going to be upset about that. But like I stated, we're going to get into that. But let's see. Let me read some of your guys' comments very quick. John Boxon says, Bud beating Boots would help him, the fighter of the decade race, win the fighter of the decade race. It definitely would. I think if he were to do that, I'm not going to claim that it's completely the thing is with Crawford for me, and keep in mind that I'm not moving the goalpost here. This is what Stephen Breadman Edwards said. In my video, I already stated that I don't know what Crawford really would have to do for me in order to become the greatest. He already is top 20, top 10 of all time for me. And of the generation, he's always going to be in that conversation as the greatest of his era. So I think Crawford at least deserves that respect. Where the question comes in is how much credit does he deserve actually in terms of being within that top 10, top 20 realm? Because you tell people that Crawford deserves to be in the top 10, top 5 fighters of all time, no one really blinks an eye, at least when you talk about especially a lot of these LDBC new media channels. But if you mention someone like Usyk, all of a sudden it gets crazy. And Crawford, even after he defeated Spence, even before Spence, they were pushing him as one of like the top 20 to top 10 fighters of all time already. But like I said, if you mention Usyk and, Inoue up there, they're like, there's no way. And that's also another thing to mention. Like Canelo Alvarez for so long had fought repeated A-grade level fighters. Not all of them were A+, but when you talk about certain guys like Caleb Plant, Callum Smith, Billy Joe Saunders, Danny Jacobs, those guys were around the A to A- category. And I think a lot of those wins aged pretty well. But for so long, so many of those channels that I reviewed, they would be like, Canelo is, he's not even on the level of Barrera or Morales. Then as soon as Crawford beat him, all of a sudden, well, he's the greatest Mexican fighter of all time. We have to give Crawford credit. So the reason why I've reviewed so many of those channels is because it's so easy to get manipulated by them for so many people. And I do that. So I do that overall. So, it's not easy to kind of get manipulated by them. But anyway, let's see. So Assassin says, what you're saying is facts. Crawford's resume is poor. His only good wins is Spence, who came up to car crashes and washed up slow Canelo. I think Errol Spence was debatably at a decent point. I mean, I'll give him a little bit of credit. Errol Spence was someone that I think Errol Spence was, still decent. I mean, he did have two car accidents. I'll give you that. I don't know if it was quite the same Errol Spence on that night. That is one thing I will say. Errol Spence was, I think, a little bit out of it in that fight. And that's not me stating that he was washed necessarily, but I think that one could definitely debate that he wasn't at his peak. But this is why, once again, I compared him to Rocky Marciano. Because Rocky, if you take a look at a lot of the fighters that he fought, people would say, well, this guy was a bit older. He was, kind of in his 40s, or he was a bit older, all this other stuff. But then with Terence Crawford, you could debate that Errol Spence said he was a bit off for that fight. He was off for over a year. And that's also one thing that I've seen with many other arguments that they love to debate when it comes to fighters they don't like. But then when it comes to a fighter that they do like, all of a sudden it's, not mentioned anymore. So yeah, that's one thing that I wanted to mention as well. And one thing I also will say is this: Canelo also, I would not say, was at a prime level. I think that Crawford also was not at a complete prime level, but I think that you could debate that Crawford was more towards his prime than what a Canelo was. Now, do I think that Canelo would have won anyway? Maybe not. I think that Crawford's just the all around more skilled fighter, and I think that if Canelo was going to win, then more than likely he would have did it that night anyway. But that overall being stated, I mean, the point is that Terence Crawford, many people will mention it with other fighters, but the truth is that Canelo had been slowing down for years. And people will mention that with other guys, but they won't mention it with Terence Crawford. But the truth is that yeah, Canelo was slowing down quite a bit, and I think that had been mentioned. Now, Canelo, he still gets great credit from me because Canelo was still a top 5 to top 10 level pound for pound fighter. But it's just interesting because people were talking about how terrible his performances were before they thought Crawford could actually potentially beat him. Then when he got in the fight with him and he beat Canelo, then all of a sudden Canelo's like these greatest things. Like I remember when I reviewed a video by Dante, and Dante called Canelo literally the most overrated fighter of all time. And now he's giving Canelo at least certain praise because he knows that that's going to level Crawford up. And that's also another thing. Because, and we're going to read on. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's see. G Machado says Bud versus Father Time is tougher than Boots. One could definitely debate that. I think it's a very interesting fight. That would be an interesting fight to see who would actually win. I would bet on Crawford if Crawford looked anything like what he did in the Canelo fight, but you never know. Assassin XYZ says even delusional Crawford ass slickers claim he would beat a prime Tommy Hearns, which is diabolical. I'm not, I got to be honest, and I've already told people this. I'm not huge on Tommy Hearns, and the reason why that is, I put him and Oscar De La Hoya in the same realm because they lost so many of their bigger fights once they started facing people in similar size. Crawford, to me, is definitely greater than Tommy. Now, would he have beaten him in a one-on-one fight? I have no idea. Tommy was so huge. He was 6'1" with a 78-inch reach. Like, the man was almost built like Muhammad Ali for a welterweight. And that's why I say Tommy Hearns, to me, and guys like Oscar De La Hoya, I don't really start counting your career until you start fighting guys similar in size. So, like, even if you take a look at Sebastian Fundora right now, it's cool that you're getting those wins, but you're way bigger than everybody else. And this is the same thing with Oscar De La Hoya and Tommy Hearns. Tommy Hearns, when we really take a look at like top 10, the top 5 pound for pound level fighters that he beat, the only win that he really has is Roberto Duran. I mean, he did beat Wilfredo Benitez, but I don't think Benitez was quite on their level. Benitez was a guy who was very talented, but pretty much lost a lot of the other fights. But that's why I give guys like Usyk so much credit and Canelo because they defeated guys that were legitimately bigger than them, like in every category. Not just height, not just reach, and not just weight, everything. Like, I don't think people understand. And that's why I also say for Inoue, if Inoue was actually able to beat the 126 pounders and just able to wipe them out, I don't think people would realize how impressive that is. Because when you talk about beating Bruce Carrington, who's like what? I mean, let me just look up his stats real quick because I can look up his stats real quick. I already know Inoue. Inoue is 5'5" with a 67-inch arm reach. Keep in mind, by the way, Rocky Marciano, because I mentioned him earlier, this guy was 5'11" or 10 with a 67-inch arm reach, the shortest reach in heavyweight history, and was 185. He was literally outsized by every great heavyweight he ever fought, which is why I put him in such high realm. Combined with the fact that Ezra Charles, Jersey Joe Walcott, and Archie Moore, and some of the other contenders that he fought were looked at as legit A grade heavyweights for the day. Although compared to today's standards, obviously it's different. Let's take a look at Bruce Carrington real quick, and let's take a look at some of these other 126 pounders because this is what I mean. And like, when I'm talking about Crawford and not just Crawford, but and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to make this as an excuse. But I think people are trying to compare Crawford fighting Canelo, and they're trying to say, well, if Inoue can do it, he should be able to go up and fight Rafael Espinoza. I would maybe understand the comparison if it's Inoue versus Bruce Carrington, but to say something like him versus Espinoza, it just doesn't make any sense to me. And the reason why that is because that would basically be like Crawford trying to fight David Benavidez. I don't think people realize how much of a size advantage Espinoza has, not just over Inoue, but literally everyone else around him. Like once again, Inoue is 5'5" with the 5'5" with the 67-inch arm reach. Espinoza is 6'1" with like a 74-inch reach. That is insane. That is like at least like a several inch reach advantage with a several inch height advantage. And I've already told people this, the only fight I've ever seen to where a fighter actually was able to utilize that advantage to that level of a degree was Usyk versus Fury. I've never seen it anywhere else. And that's why, like, when Usyk defeated Fury, all of a sudden, a lot of these LDBC channels were like, well, we seen Holyfield, do good against, who the fuck was that? Some of you guys will know what the fuck I'm talking about. There was this one Russian fighter like a couple decades ago. He fought Holyfield in the latter part of his career. He was a champion. He was like 7 foot tall, looked like a Neanderthal. I don't remember his fucking name, but fucking had like a big brow ridge, a lot of hair in his body. What was a guy that was a guy that pretty much relied on size. Tyson Fury was not that guy. He relied on size, but he was heavily skilled. And I already told people this, like, you never heard people mention like, oh, well, this is the weakest heavyweight era and blah, blah, blah. Like, it wasn't the weakest heavyweight era all of a sudden when Deontay Wilder was champion, when he was fighting bum after bum after bum after bum. But then all of a sudden Usyk and Fury take over, and you notice they had no interest ever since then. But let me get back to my point here. So in a way, if he's going to 126, Bruce Carrington is 3 inches taller than him and has a 5-inch reach advantage over him. This is what I'm talking about. And that's not even mentioning probably at least 10 to 15 pounds being bigger than him. I don't think people realize if Inoue was actually able to beat Carrington, especially being near 34 years old, that's something that's phenomenal. And if he were able to beat Espinoza, the only other fight I could really compare that to is Usyk versus Fury. That's why I place Usyk versus Fury on such a high level, because Fury once upon a time was a pound per pound level fighter. Usyk's the only fighter I've ever seen with 2A grade level fighters beat a fighter of that caliber and win. Now, one could debate that, Fury has some holes in his game, and that's for sure. But that's why, to me, you have to put Usyk on a great level. And to me, he's at least on the level of Crawford. Some may debate him over him, and I would understand that. So let's get into this. Let's see. John Sean Boxon says Bud just can't rank above the all-time greats with better resumes. Well, I agree with that. I think that if you don't have a greater resume, that oftentimes it's going to be harder to be above someone, unless, and this is the only exception to me, if, like, for example, so if we compare it like Crawford versus Oscar De La Hoya, or another great comparison would be Tyson Fury versus AJ Anthony Joshua. The reason why I compare those two is because if we were to compare, who did I just mention? I don't remember my first comparison. Shit. Oh, yeah. Oscar De La Hoya and Terence Crawford. So Crawford beat the two biggest guys in his career, Spence and Canelo, and he did it relatively dominantly. So I'm going to give him a lot of credit there. When you talk about Oscar De La Hoya, yeah, he beat some pound per pound guys, but I don't, and I know this is going to sound crazy to a lot of people. I don't count the Chavez win. I don't count the Pernell Whitaker win. I don't count those because you had such a size advantage over them. What did you do against Trinidad? What did you do against Mosley? What did you do against some of those other guys? And he did not beat those guys. So that's why Oscar and Hearns cannot be above someone like a Crawford or an Usyk. And if Inoue builds his resume up a little bit more, they can't be above Inoue either. Inoue already right now is in my top 50 fighters of all time, probably top 40. If he, like, let's just say, for example, if he beats Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez, he's already going to be within my top 30 fighters of all time. That's for certain. If he beats some of the, like, if he wipes out, if he beats like Bruce Carrington and some of the names at 126, he will then enter into top 20 conversation for me. And if he just wipes out the division, we have to talk about him being a top 7 to top 5 boxer of all time. We have to, because he really should not be accomplishing that. and that's what the greatest of all times do. Anyways, so let's continue. But yeah, um, if you think Rocky Marciano is an all-time great, you're a racist. Well, that's what I mean. Like, and that's a great point by Mr. Jaime, because so many of these channels, they love the bitch about. And when I say so many of these channels, let's be real, we all know what I'm talking about here. We're talking about the LGBT and new media channels, and they come into my comment section sometimes. Some of these guys that have that mindset, and I'll say that Rocky Marciano and Terence Crawford, in my view, they're in a similar level, and they get offended by that. To me, it's nothing to get offended about, because I consider them both top 20, borderline top 10 fighters of all time. I consider Rocky, and they'll be like, well, Rocky was, he fought this and this. He was a manufactured heavyweight. No, Rocky was not a manufactured heavyweight. Joe Louis, one could debate, was a manufactured heavyweight, because there's not really a whole lot of opponents. And that's also another thing. You have so many of these guys that love to argue about, well, these guys fought in a Caucasian heavyweight time. And I mean, hey, listen, if you want to debate that, that's cool. Joe Louis was the king of fighting repeated Caucasian heavyweights. So if that's your point, make that point with Joe Louis, because he didn't beat Ezra Charles, even though, he was offered 2 years. To be fair, he also got one of the worst robberies of all time against Jersey Joe Walcott, a fight he clearly should have lost, and then also he also lost to Max Smelling. If Rocky Marciano had that career, if you switched their careers, if you switched their skin colors, most people would consider Rocky clearly above Joe Louis. I don't think it's a question. Just my view. But anyways, let's see. Mr. Assassin says, as good as Crawford is, him versus a prime Benitez, Leonard Hagler, Hearns and Duran would be a whole different story. I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't base a lot of my arguments off of hypotheticals, very rarely. Crawford did his thing for his time, but I would definitely put him over Hearns. I would also put him over Hagler, but it's a debate. Duran is also a debate. The one I don't think I could put him over was Sugar Ray Leonard. And not because he couldn't compete with the skill set. Listen, guys, there are certain guys that you can consider all-time great. There are certain guys that I take a look at and I'm like, wow, like they're one of the most skilled players or athletes that I've ever seen, but they just don't have the level of accomplishments or resume in order to get there. Like Nikola Jokic, for example. Jokic is someone that is debatably the most offensive talented player other than Steph Curry. And LeBron is kind of up there, but I honestly, and I know that a lot of people are going to disagree with that, but I think that Curry and Jokic, just for the all-around offensive talent, just in terms of how they can impact their team, because I think LeBron is more of an individual ball dominator, and I think the stats prove that. But the point is that Jokic, to me, is one of the most talented players of all time. Like, he has top 10 to top 5 potential of all time, but I can't place you there if you only have one championship. You know what I mean? So the point is that you have to have it. And, for so many of these channels that I've reviewed, like so many of the LDBC and the media guys, for them to say like, oh, well, Lomachenko, Great White Hope, why is he ranked so high, blah, blah, blah. And so many of these guys, and let me mention this point that Terence Bud Crawford was blackballed for like 10 years is complete horseshit. Terence Bud Crawford was never blackballed. People are like, well, Crawford couldn't stay at number 1 pound for pound for 6 months, and these guys were there for years. When Lomachenko was number 1 pound per pound, now when he was number 1 pound per pound for me, that was when he won his title at 135 and defeated Jorge Linares. That's when he became number 1 pound per pound for me. But people forget, like, before then, he defeated Nicholas Walters, Gary Russell Jr., and what was his name? Nicholas Walters. Those were 3 huge wins. Like, those were wins that, and fights, by the way, that everyone was calling for. Rigondeaux, although to be fair, he was about a couple weight classes smaller. People were calling for that fight. Those same channels that were claiming that Lomachenko was avoiding Rigondeaux made the fucking excuses that Rigondeaux was offered too long, he was too small. And I mean, listen, cool. If you want to make that, one could maybe debate that that's a relevant excuse. But then when it comes to Terence Bud Crawford, you're not going to make that same one because you want to make your favorite black fighter look better. So that's my point. And once again, this is not to attack black fighters or black, commented, none of that. I'm just saying that we got to keep the same standards here, which is why it's so hard to take seriously what so many, commentators, or commenters in general really have to say. But anyway, but so, and I'll get to more of you guys' comments, by the way. Love you all. Thank you for commenting. Sorry, I just want to get every point out there. But the point is that they try to mention that Crawford was blackballed and all this other stuff. How are you going to be the number 1 pound per pound fighter? And I've mentioned this so many times. how are you going to be the number one pound for pound fighter for before the Sean Porter win? His two best wins were Gamboa and Postal. If Crawford was a Caucasian fighter, all those channels would just be claiming how he was feeding off of bums. Because who else was he fighting? Jeff Horn, he just Kavalauskas. Feel like no one cares about those fighters. No one cares about those guys. So I mean, the point is that it doesn't make any sense. Canelo and Lomachenko at one point in time did deserve to be over them. I don't over him. It is what it is. This point that Crawford was blackballed is nonsense. Crawford deserved to be the number one pound for pound fighter at 2 points in his career. And those are the facts. When he defeated Errol Spence, that is when he first deserved it. Then Usyk defeated Tyson Fury, surpassing Crawford's win over Spence. I think that that's very logical, considering the height and the weight, difference, and considering that was looked at as a fight that Fury was supposed to win, heading into that fight. And he was looked at as the best heavyweight of that era, after that. And let me also get to my Fury versus AJ comparison a little bit earlier, after this. But Usyk then was over then, and then you would have to concede that was the correct selection. And even if you thought that Crawford was over him, I mean, that's cool and everything, but they try to make it into a racial issue when it's really not. Now, if Usyk didn't have a resume at all, or maybe just fought a cruiserweight, okay, I can maybe see it, but that's not what happened. So that's why you have to be very careful, And then Marciano, when he defeated Canelo, he deserved to be number one again. That's when he deserved to be number one. And then after that, he retired. So, I mean, people are like, well, Crawford couldn't be number one for more than 6 months. It's like, well, the first time around, he got surpassed with a greater win that Usyk had over Fury. And then B, it's like he retired. So, I mean, it just is what it is. So this narrative that Crawford was blackballed, it doesn't make any sense for those of us that have actually seen it and been around. But anyway, well, let's see what Assassin has to say. Marciano doesn't get enough props. He had to dig deep in the second. Charles fight with a cut on his nose to win by knockout. Well, yeah, and that's why I also say, like, I responded to I think her name is Casey Cool now. I responded to a comment, and she was like, well, Rocky is trash, but you guys are just trying to hold on to a white fighter. And it's like, well, it has done. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure for some people that it is, but I don't think people understand, like, those guys were still looked at as great fighters at the time, even though some of them were a bit older. And I don't think, like, Rocky was not favored in though. Like, he was not favored. And all those guys were talking shit about him. Like, they would always talk shit about Rocky, being like, if I can't beat this guy, I'm a bum, or I deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. And Rocky would always somehow surprise them. His stamina was out the roof. His power was out of this world. And he was a bit more skilled by the end of his career, I think, than what certain people expected. He still was very rough around the edges, very Rocky, if you want to call it. Pun very much intended. I apologize. But that overall being stated, Rocky was someone that, once again, when you talk about his 67-inch reach and you talk about how he's only 185 pounds, he's severely undersized, even for those days. He's really a light heavyweight for that era, and he's beating Ezzard Charles, Jersey Joe Walcott, Archie Moore, and other contenders. And it's really phenomenal what he was able to do. In a way, what Rocky Marciano is kind of like a more technical Caucasian version of Deontay Wilder. That's kind of what he is. And that's why I say, and these guys with Deontay Wilder, they had no fucking problem calling him one of the top 10 heavyweights when he was knocking out these guys. Because Wilder, and don't get me wrong, he gets my respect. But Wilder was someone that was just literally knocking out can after can after can. I mean, it was ridiculous. Like, he had 10 title defenses. If you were to ask most people who are not major fans of him, like, name me 5 fighters who he beat, they wouldn't be able to tell you. Like, they'd be able to name you Tyson Fury and that one Cuban dude, and that's probably about who they'd be able to mention. But anyway, Assassin says Mayweather's resume is better than Crawford. Mayweather fought like 20 world. That's not even a question in my mind. I mean, anyone who would really debate that, in my personal view, I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, let's see. If you've seen that recent podcast Crawford was on, he's clearly bitter and jealous with the recognition Boots is getting after the Zayas win. Well, I think that I think there's a little bit of that. I also think that Crawford believes that Boots, that his career is going to kind of be tied to his, because they're both Black American fighters. And I think that there is a certain narrative that Crawford did not want to fight him. So I think Crawford is going to take a look at that and be like, he's waiting for Boots to lose so he can be like, see, this is a guy that y'all, thought that, was going to beat me. But I will state this, Crawford was a little bit tentative. And I'm not claiming that Crawford's avoiding him necessarily, but I do think that he said this guy is very young. He's very skilled. He's a little bit of a bad style. I would rather fight Canelo. And listen, man, I ain't got no problem with that. That's fine with me. But yeah, don't tell John or Goodfella. I don't think we ever got to see a peak Spence. Well, peak Spence to me, and we're actually going to get more to the comments of this as well on my video. But I love reading y'all's comments, so keep it coming. But let's see. Peak Spence to me was like he did look peak Spence against Ugas, but I don't know if he quite looked peak against that of a Crawford. That was kind of the issue. I think a lot of people would agree that he looked a bit off. To me, I still think he looked very much the same of the old him, not necessarily the peak version, but a relative prime version. Um, but my point is this, like I said, if we're gonna make this point with like guys like Rocky, we got to make it with Crawford as well. And I'm not discrediting either of them. Like I said, both of them are like top 10, top 20 fighters of all time for me. So yeah. But peak Spence to me, like the best version of Spence I've seen, probably against Kell Brook, to be honest with you. That was probably the best version I've seen of him. Either that or against Porter or something like that. And he was still there. Like he was still A grade, obviously. But he definitely did seem a bit rusty for the Crawford fight. I'll give you that much. But let's see. In my opinion, Spence should have moved up to under 54 years before the Bud fight. I don't know how he would have done that. That would have been interesting. I think more than likely he would have. That was another fighter that also was kind of being a bit overrated during that time. Jermell Charlo. For those of you that remember all my videos on Jermell Charlo, these guys talk so much shit about how Jermell, he's really top 5, and then he goes up to fight Canelo. To be fair, moving up 2 weight classes, although Jermell, to be fair, is also a complete weight bully at 154. But they were talking all this shit about how Jermell, he could probably beat Canelo. Then all of a sudden the fight comes around and they're like, oh, well, I don't know the weight, blah, 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 all sort of stuff. It's like they start making all these excuses, although they were talking all this shit. John Boxing had Canelo losing the skull. Yeah, I mean, I believe that. Well, that's also the thing, too, is like, I noticed a certain amount of these channels, they were talking about how terrible Canelo was doing in performances for years because they didn't think the Crawford fight was going to happen, just to decrease his pound for pound ranking. But then when the Crawford fight came around, all of a sudden they're like, well, I thought Canelo did great against Skull. And it's like, don't get it twisted. Like, that's why I say we got to be logical and tell about what actually happened. I think that Canelo was still a great fighter, but I don't think he was quite at a prime form anymore. And that's also another thing, people will be like, well, and I favorite Canelo heading into that fight. So I'm not discrediting Crawford completely by any means. But that does have to be talked about when we, compare it. It's not necessarily like that was a, overall Tommy Hearns, Sugar Ray Leonard type of fight. That was a fight. What I would compare it best to is Sugar Ray Leonard versus Hagler, where many people considered Hagler just a little bit over it, but not completely. He still was one of the best fighters in the world. That it was very similar to that fight, to where Sugar Ray Leonard was probably at a better point. Now, Crawford, to be fair, was older, but I've already explained the difference between the age of a fighter and the wear and tear. You can have someone that is older, but it doesn't mean they have as much wear and tear. And Canelo not only was fighting within 4 weight classes, he was fighting guys that were like legitimately bigger than him for a very long time. So that's something that we have to talk about. Sup, realist? What's up, Mr. Vaughn Jackson? Kenneth Dimitro says Tommy right hand was a heat-seeking missile. I agree with that. Well, Tommy Hearns was a fantastic fighter, but that's why I have to put him a little bit lower, because to me, and this is why Usyk gets so much credit from me, and Mayweather and Pacquiao. When you can beat great fighters or A grade level fighters that are A grade, and you're really not supposed to be beating those guys, that tells me how great you actually are. Tommy Hearns is one of those fighters that really was built in a lab. Like he's got 78 inches of reach. He's 6'1". He's got power that can knock it anyone. He's got speed that literally can compete with Sugar Ray Leonard. Why are you not winning against them? That's my question. Because with the physical talent that you had and some of the boxing talent that you had, if you were really as great as some of those other guys, why did you not, like, he literally should have won all those fights, but he couldn't beat Ray. He couldn't beat Hagler. He beat Duran, but I don't count that. And I know that a lot of people overall are, they kind of disagree with that, but to me, that's kind of similar of De La Hoya versus Chavez. You know, it's cool that you're beating up those guys that are a lot smaller than you. That's great, but it's like, what can you do against guys that are similar? Now, I don't mind counting it if you've won a lot of the bigger fights in your career. Like Lomachenko, for example, kind of did, at least beat Walters and Linares and, Gary Russell and some of those other guys that were kind of similar. George Kambosos, if you want to count him. Although, to be fair, I kind of thought he was over the hill by the time that Lomachenko fought him. But the point is that when you talk about like Tommy Hearns, it's like other than Benitez and Duran, it's like who the fuck else did he beat? And he lost in some upsets because although he was a fantastic fighter, he really kind of underwhelmed, and that's kind of the thing for me. Rafael Espinoza, really a welterweight. I fucking agree with that, which is why I say that I don't think people realize how much of a size differential it really is between him and Inoue. It's completely ridiculous, which is why I say that, people, of course, compare it to Crawford versus Canelo. The only way you really could compare it, there's only one comparison. That's Usyk versus Fury. That's the only one. The only way you would be able to really compare that with Crawford and is if he fought someone like a David Benavidez at 168. That'd be the only fucking way. So I mean, anyway. Devo says, yo, what's up? What's up, brother? He says, quick question. How do you see Devin Haney versus Duran Ennis going? Ooh, fucking A. I don't see that going well for Devin. I think I gotta be honest on Devin, and I like Devin a lot. I think he receives a lot of unwarranted hate from any corner in boxing. I think that he's willing to fight anybody. I think it's only going to be a matter of time before a lot of his true flaws in the style gets exposed. I think Haney relies a lot on his reach, relies a lot on his speed, relies a lot on his foot speed. And he's very talented. I'm not gonna come here and tell you that Haney is shit. I don't think that's fair. He's very talented. But I do think there's a reason why he looked the way he did against Ryan Garcia. And don't get it wrong. I understand. Ryan Garcia was caught on steroids. That was also not a fight that, even if Ryan Garcia was on bull steroids, if he was on tiger steroids, Haney should have not looked like that. That was a Ryan Garcia that, to be honest with you, the first half of that fight was not throwing anything and really only landed a left hook and a few other punches throughout the second half of that fight. And Haney looked terrible. And I think that if that would have been any other fighter, that especially a lot of these channels like the LDBC and New Media, they would have grilled Inoue and they would have grilled a lot of those fighters. I mean, Usyk, take a look at how he looked against Verhoeven. Clearly, Usyk was not the same fighter in that fight. He was overweight in that fight. He was a lot slower, and he's almost already 40 years old. And what were these channels saying? See, Usyk, we don't know how good he is because of blah, blah, making all these excuses. If that would have been Inoue or Usyk in there against that caliber fighter, they would have grilled him. They would have tried to completely tear down the legacy. Now, as someone who's logical myself, I'm not going to do that because I take context in the situations. But what is my personal view on Devin Haney? Do I believe he'd beat Duran Boots Ennis? More than likely not. That being stated, the jury is still out on Duran Boots Ennis because I'm still kind of looking at him. I think he's very talented. I think he's more skilled and talented than Devin Haney. But I need to see more of a resume out of him. I also need to see more of a resume out of Devin, to be quite honest with you. But anyway, let's see. And that person was answering my question earlier. David Haye versus Valuev, absolutely. So when I was mentioning the Fury versus Usyk comparison, what Dante was trying to compare it to was that, well, we've seen guys beat big guys before, and it's like, right, but let's not bullshit here. Tyson Fury was one of the greater skilled heavyweights, not only of his era, but of all time, especially for his size. And he was trying to compare it to Nikolai Valuev. Like, come on. Like, that's ridiculous. G. Machado says, Bud's a great, no doubt, but he has more belts than quality wins, something the LBC and like channels like to claim about Inoue. Well, my thing also is this, like Crawford and Inoue have had a very similar career path. And that's something that they don't kind of want to admit. But like, I used to, for people that kind of wonder about my standards or like my racialism element, I'm not someone that really goes into that. I used to call Inoue on my channel the most overrated fighter on the pound per pound list because he was ranked top 5 pound per pound way too early, in my view. You're defeating guys like Jamie McDonnell and, Emmanuel Rodriguez. And it's like, who the fuck are these guys? I mean, don't get me wrong. I know them. But does that really get you to the top 5 pound per pound list? But it's the same thing with Crawford. Like, they love to say that Crawford was blackballed, he was this, he was that. And it's like, was he really? Was he really? Because this man was top 5 pound per pound for literally like 10 consecutive years. And his two best wins are Postal and Gamboa. If that would have been a lot of other fighters, they would have never been that high. I'm just gonna claim that right now. Like if Crawford was a Caucasian fighter, these LDBC and the media channels would have been on his ass. And they would have said, why does he keep fighting these bombs? Why does he keep doing this? But they let it slide because, well, we don't know the reason. But it is what it is. Anyway, but let's see. Top G, where do you rank Bud of all time? I assume that you're talking to someone early in the comment section. Or maybe he was talking about me. I don't know. Me personally, just in case, I rank Bud at least within my top 20 of all time to top 10. He's there. But yeah, G Machado, so that's who he was talking to. Okay. Top 25 just for P. I think that's fair too. Top 25, I don't know how high, but the simple fact he's 3 times undisputed champ. He'd have to be top 20 for me at least. Nakatani has to be an S plus win on Inoue's resume. I don't know if I'll agree with that. I do think that it's at least an A grade win because the thing about Nakatani for me is that I still don't know how good he is. I've only seen him really fight one confirmed A grade fighter for me, or one fighter that other than Inoue was very good, and that's Sebastian Hernandez. And he kind of looked like shit in that fight. I need to see him against real A grade. Like I'd love to see him versus MJ Akhmadaliev. That would be a fight that would be a must see. Now, if he can dominate that fight, we'll be like, okay, A to A plus. But the jury's kind of still out on him in my view. But it's an A grade win. Don't get it twisted. That's still a top 20 to top 10 pound per pound win. So but that's why I say Inoue is catching up on Crawford and also Usyk a little bit in a way that probably many of the Crawford fans don't want to admit. But if he wipes out 126, he'll probably be above Crawford, especially if he actually does beat Bam Bam Rodriguez in a fight, which is not a confirmed. That is not a given because that is a fight that could go either way in my view. Anyway. Fans who don't like Inoue are basing Espinosa's chances of winning on pure size. Right. And if that was Crawford, they would claim about the size all the live long damn day. So it's completely different when you're fighting someone that is linked here. And, let me also address this because many people are like, well, Crawford beat Canelo. And don't get it twisted. Crawford beating Canelo is fantastic, especially because of the size difference. But that, like I said, that's like Leonard versus Hagler. So where, there's at least some physical advantages that the other has. Like Leonard may not have power, he may not have the weight, he may not have the size in terms of the all-around girth, but he has the reach, he has the speed, he has the movement, and Crawford had all those, especially the reach. He had a 3-inch reach advantage over Canelo. He was taller than Canelo, by the way. So that's why I say Canelo is really more of a middleweight, and Crawford's more around a 147 to 154 pounder. Just because someone is fighting someone a couple weight classes up doesn't always mean that fighter truly belongs there. Even at the higher weight class, like Mayweather at times would bring up fighters from other weight classes, but he wasn't really a natural 147 pounder. And they always hold it in that standard. I think the same standard needs to apply to Canelo because Canelo is not a natural super middleweight. Every fighter he fought there was clearly bigger than him. Like it was not close. So that's what I'm saying. But anyway, the Four Kings are kind of overrated. Well, I think Tommy Hearns is definitely overrated, and I think he's a fantastic fighter. He's still one of my favorite fighters to watch, but he's hella overrated. I'll agree with that. Duran, and I know I'm probably going to get killed for this, Duran at times has been a bit overrated just because he lost so many big fights after 135. I'm not really going to count Tommy Hearns, but he actually was in spots apparently winning against Marvin Hagler, and he blew it in the final part of that fight. But the fact that he was even able to make that fight competitive is quite astonishing. But there's also some other fights where you take a look at it and it's like, you lost that one? Because I see Duran in like greatest of all time conversations, and it's like, yeah, but if he was like, why did he not beat Wilfredo Benitez? Why did he not defeat those guys? And don't get it twisted, Duran is an all-time great. He's top 20, top 10 of all time for me too. But that's where like I have to take a look at him versus guys like Mayweather and Pacquiao, and I have to put both of those guys ahead of him because those guys won up in the heavier weight classes consistently. But as for Crawford, Usyk, or Inoue, I mean, Inoue still has a little bit more proven to do in my view. But as for like comparing Duran to Usyk and Crawford, one could debate it. I'm not going to claim that Duran has a weaker resume than those two, but I can understand if it's a debate. Anyway, um, someone said, I think Espinoza will be dangerous early on. How tall and powerful he is, but I think Inoue will eventually find his timing and catch Espinoza with a good shot. I've not watched enough of Espinoza, to be honest. I would have to see. I also would like to see Inoue fight Robesi Ramirez, to be honest, but I haven't heard shit from that fucking guy ever since his fights with Rafi Espinoza, so I don't know. But that's going to be hard because Espinoza can box, and he's got great power, and he's just so tall and lengthy. But Inoue, if there's a guy that can do it, it'd be Inoue. So we'll see. At least one for his size. Bob Arum and Top Ring protected Crawford from Pacquiao. That is actually one of the points that I will not agree with. Actually, Crawford was chasing for that fight, I believe, and I think that Bob Arum actually was protecting Pacquiao from there. And Pacquiao wasn't super ecstatic about that fight either. But that would have been an interesting one. But let's see. Is the difference between the best and the greatest? I agree. Crawford is one of the best that I've ever seen, but in terms of the greatest, overall, yeah, we'd have to see. But that also being stated, in terms of the best, and I mean, you could debate that Crawford is the best out of these three if you wanted to. However, Usyk, I think, deserves a debate there. I mean, he's right on par with Crawford in my view. I don't think it's far apart. No matter who you give the edge to, I think you would have to. Usyk just did too much. And in a way, he's up there kind of in terms of the skill set. I think they all have their own holes at their best and at their worst. But the thing is that Inoue is the only one to where it's like I need to see him a little bit more to really put him quite on the same level. But let's see. Jaime says Conteford became the number one pound per pound when he beat the great Ndongo. Oh, absolutely. That's what that's also another thing. We're trying to make Joyous Ndongo. I'll never forget this comment. I mentioned this so much. I reviewed a video by Dante. I think it was like several months ago, and he was talking about like how much of a snake this guy is. And then this is why I call him that, because he would bring up so many points trying to discredit the resumes of non-black fighters like Canelo or Lomachenko or some of these other guys, Usyk, guys like that. But this guy said that Julius Ndongo, which is one of the bigger wins in Crawford's career, he defeated Edward Troyanowski, and Troyanowski defeated an undefeated Argentine fighter who was like 48-0. He beat some really good guys. Now, you know why he said really good guys? Because he couldn't name a fucking name on his resume. That's why. Look at that dude's name. Look up the name Edward Troyanowski. He was the undefeated Russian fighter that like two people on the whole planet were claiming that Crawford was avoiding. He was a very one-dimensional Russian fighter who was okay, undefeated at the time, and he beat an Argentine fighter who fought literally nothing but a whole bunch of homemade fights in Argentina. And this guy had the goal to say, well, he beat some really good, like what names, dude? Name them. Name one. He couldn't name them. And there's a reason why he had 47 fights and didn't get a title fight until like his late 40th fight. Like, give me a fucking break. Anyway, remember Crawford was the mandatory for Fundora belt, but he ducked and chose Little Majimov. I don't remember that, to be honest. I don't. What I will state is that people were trying to compare Majimov to. They were trying to make out Majimov to be like this Archer Beterbiev, Dimitri Bivol. You can always tell that the Crawford fans, they don't believe his resume is that deep either, because any opponent that he fights, they just immediately try to make him out like he's an all-time great. Like they try to compare him immediately to pound for pound guys. Like, well, Majimov is, kind of like Gennady Golovkin. He's kind of like Beterbiev and Bivol. It's like, he's nothing like that. What are you talking about? Majimov has beat nobody. And in his fight against Virgil Ortiz, he lost in more dominant fashion against Virgil Ortiz than when he did against Crawford. Now, to me, it doesn't matter that much. But I mean, the point is that let's not sit here and try to make out Majimov like he's this pound per pound level talent. He's very talented, but come on, like let's be real. Let's see. Fundora is the most feared fighter of this generation. I mean, he's feared, but no offense. I mean, to be fair, he didn't sound too hot on that Duran Butenis fight, though. I will say that. That also being stated, though, I mean, there's no offense against Fundora, but same thing with like Rafael Espinoza. You're fucking 6'6" with like a 78-inch reach at 154. Like, come on, man. Really? Like, at least move up to middleweight. Jesus Christ. Bud became pound for pound by beating the great Brutus Prescott. That's also another thing. That was also another fighter they tried to like claim. Well, Bud beat Breeders Prescott when he was Breeders Prescott. Breeders Prescott was never anybody. The one time Breeders Prescott was somebody was when he defeated Amir Khan and was undefeated, and I think literally lost the fight right after that to some fucking no name. By the time he fought Crawford, he already had like 5 losses. Like, anyway. Kickboxers have a history of doing well in boxing. Yeah, for whatever reason they do. I don't know why. Mr. BR, can you make a prediction video for Claressa Shields this Saturday? If you don't, you're racist. Well, shit, man, you're gonna have to call me a racist because shit, I ain't watching that. I'm sorry. There's no, and listen, man, I have respect for Claressa, and those girls over there. It's the only girls, that, to be quite honest with you, that I can kind of get into are girls like Katie Taylor, Alicia Baumgartner. I'm starting to watch that new girl, I think Caroline Dubois, like the sister of Danny Dubois, and Amanda Serrano. Those are pretty much the only ones because they're the only ones that really fight any competition. So I would love to see like a fight between those girls sometime. Claressa just don't fucking fight anybody, and I like Claressa. She's a fantastic fighter. She's extremely talented, but it's gonna kind of be hard to judge how great she actually is because, and it's not just her. It's really Katie Taylor and all those girls over there because I still think women's boxing is improving. I don't think it's quite on the level yet that it needs to be. And it just may not get there because I don't think that boxing is mainly a women's sport. I think that it's improving, but I also don't think it's improving to this massive degree. So we'll see. But anyway, I see Shields getting stopped. Oh, man, that's what I'm hoping for. That'd be interesting. I need to see who the hell she's fighting. I mean, I assume that most of y'all are being sarcastic most of the time, but I don't fucking know. Any opponent that I see Claressa Shields mainly fight, it's usually a fighter where I'm like, really? So I mean, I don't know. More BDC says Canelo wasn't the same fighter after the Golovkin rematch. Actually, Canelo, in my view, was at a peak level until the Dmitry Bivol fight. I think that after the Caleb Plant fight, that's when we saw a great amount of slippage from Canelo. That was when I was like, okay, like, and it was hard to tell in the Bivol fight because like he really should have never took that fight in the first place. But because he's just not really even a super middleweight, let alone a fucking light heavyweight. But I mean, the point is that once I saw him after that, I was like, okay, there's a little bit of slippage there. Because when he fought Golovkin in the third fight, I was like, that did not look like the same Canelo. When I saw him against John Ryder, he looked like shit. He just didn't look like the same fighter after that. Let's see what this guy has to say. There's a video on Recognize the Matrix channel where Bob Ram said that Pacquiao was too much for Crawford, and this was before the Joyce Ndongo fight. I mean, I have to take a look at that, but I do remember quite thoroughly, at least according to my recollection, that there was multiple times that Crawford wanted the fight. And I remember Bob Arum actually stating that, I don't want Pacquiao to get hurt. I remember that a couple times. So I don't know how true that is. Actually, I'd have to look, but I actually think it's the other way around. But let's see. Let's see. Okay, this man's talking about Inoue or E-415. Wait, he already fought Akhmadaliev and won unanimously in September 2025, though. I'm talking about I was talking about Nakatani, my brother. I was talking about, because we were talking about how good of a win is Nakatani really for Inoue. Well, to me, the jury is still out. I need to see him beat some A-grade level names, and I think MJ Akhmadaliev is an A-grade level name. So that's why, like, I would love to see Nakatani versus like MJ Akhmadaliev or something like that. So that's what I'm saying. Anyway, Shields will become the GOAT if she wins. Nah, because her resume is full of pizza delivery drivers. I agreed. I said the same shit. Jay say too much 09 says Madrimov was tricky for everyone. It was a close fight. Let's be for real. Definitely was a close fight. I thought Virgil got one more round of Madrimov that Crawford didn't get on him. I thought with Virgil Ortiz it was 8 rounds to 4. I thought with Crawford it was 7 rounds to 5. He's a tricky fighter. He's just he's one of those amateur type fighters that move around a lot, feint a lot, but don't really take charge enough. He's very talented. He's very awkward. And I think he is one of those fights to where it's like, even if you're the best of fighters like Crawford, you're going to be like, fuck, man. Like, do I really have to fight this guy? But it's like, I just don't ever see him being like, top 10 and top 20 pound for pound. He's a very talented fighter, but it's not like it's like, oh my God, it's, It's, he's better be like, let's calm down. Morbid ZC says, in my opinion, Crawford versus Madrimov was a draw. I'm not going to go that far. I thought Crawford was a little bit too active, but it definitely was one of the tougher fights of his career. Crawford won a lot of those rounds. Well, he won the fight, but I'm not going to say like a lot of those rounds. There's certain Crawford fans that are like, he won like 9 rounds to 3. No, he didn't win 9 rounds to 3. Sorry. Bivol ended Canelo's prime. One could debate that. To be honest, I think it's Usyk, Inoue, and Crawford. I would. I gotta be honest. This is my particular order. I would, in terms of the greatness bar, I would have Usyk first. I would have Crawford second, and I would have Inoue third. And the reason why I would have Usyk first is because not only do I think skill wise he can compete with any of them, but point B, I think he has the most impactful win out of any of them, which is the Fury fight, because Fury was not only looked at as an A+ level fighter, but he was so much bigger. And C, I just think he has the all around better resume within a significant less amount of fights. And some people may debate me on that. But I've already stated, let me just address all their A-grade wins real quick. I've not even gotten to a lot of the comments on my video, but it's okay. I don't know how much longer this stream's going to be. It may be another hour or two. I don't know. I do have to go to bed, I think, by like 2.5 hours, something like that, but we still should have plenty of time. So Usyk, the A-grade level wins that I would consider in his career, I would consider, let's see here. The first A-grade level win, I would say Glowacki, the Polish fighter. I would consider him A-grade, someone who completely outboxed and dominated the B+ to A- Marco Huck. So I would say Glowacki, Michael Hunter, because he had a draw with Alexander Povetkin and also beat Martin Bakole. I wouldn't say it's anything above an A-, but I do think it's an A-. Also, Murat Gassiev, who now is a 2-weight division champion, one of the few to ever become cruiserweight and heavyweight champion, although to be fair, he kind of was given that belt, but still, he had to work his way up. And I'm trying to think of who else. There's one more at that weight class that I'm forgetting that I thought was A-grade. There's one more. I know I'm forgetting somebody. It's fucking Glowacki, Murat Gassiev, Michael Hunter. It wasn't Tony Bellew, because I would kind of consider him like maybe A- at the time, but I think he's kind of a mix between A- and B+. Who the fuck was what the hell was that other one, man? I don't know. I'll come back to it. But the other one, of course, that we also got to talk about is Danny Dubois, A-grade win. I've been telling people about Dubois for a while. AJ, which is like an A+ win, and Tyson Fury, which is an A+ win. So I think Usyk's resume is pretty much fucking confirmed at that point. So to me, he has the best resume because you could debate anywhere from like 7 to 9 A-grade level wins. You could. For Crawford, like I said, what other A-grade wins does he have other than Postal, Gamboa, Porter, Spence, Madrimov, and Canelo? There's nothing else. And don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean his resume is trash. It just means that he does have the lesser A-grade level names compared to some other guys. In a way, though, let's talk about him because he's interesting. I don't know if I consider that Nonito Donaire fight a for sure A-grade level win, just because Donaire was someone that was older. But it's kind of a debate because play my own video. My bad. Just because he was older and he was losing the guys at higher weight classes that I thought were talented, like Carl Frampton, and he was kind of losing in dominant fashion. Let me think who else. But the wins that I would count as A-grade for sure: Nakatani, Fulton, and MJ Akhmadaliev. You have to have at least those 3. Now, the ones that I also would debate as A-grade: Marlon Tapales, because he did beat MJ Akhmadaliev. He's similar to a George Kambosos or a Ricardo Mayorga, to where, kind of got that 1 A-grade win, but it was a fantastic A-grade win. And no, you didn't expect him to be on top for long, but he showed better boxing ability than what you actually thought. And he actually got 1 really good A-grade win. So I'll give him A- for that. Louis Nery is, that's kind of on the borderline. That's between like B+, A-. That's kind of up to the eye of the beholder. And another one that I also would include, Emmanuel Rodriguez. That's a debate. I don't know if I would really count him there. He did beat one of the Russell brothers, to be fair, and I think he has another good win. But he also lost to some guys that I was like, I don't know if I can really kind of make right after that. But yeah. So anyway, but Inoue still has a lot more time though. Like he has Bam Bam, which is a huge win. He has Bruce Carrington, he has Nick Ball, Brandon Figueroa, Angelo Leo, so many names. So it's like we'll see what he does. But let's see. I almost forgot there's a good UFC event this Saturday, much better than Clarissa Shields garbage. Yeah, that's Islam Makhachev. Honestly, I'm not super excited about that. And Islam is an all-time great level fighter. Some may even debate him as the greatest if he wins, but it's like I just don't think he's in the most talented division. There's just not anyone at 170 that can really compete with him, in my view. And I think it's probably going to show again, but we'll see. Yeah, I'm sorry. And listen, I like Clarissa, great fighter, but I, it's nothing to watch. Magomedov landed the more clean and effective punches throughout the fight against Crawford. Well, there are certain fights like Bevo versus Better Beef or other fights to where like you can land the more effective punches at times, but it doesn't always win you the fight. So that in terms of scoring a fight, it depends on who landed the more damaging shots at times, who landed the more clean shots, and whose game plan is more effective, and also who can be more active. One clean shot throughout the fight. He did land multiple. There was times to where honestly, I will agree with that man a little bit there. I do actually think that Magomedov was landing at times the more clean, effective punches, but he just wasn't being active enough. And that's kind of what won Crawford the fight. But let's see. Marco Huck is a very underrated win for Usyk. One could debate that. It's just, to me, he was a little bit too up and down, straight and stiff, kind of regular German European fighter, but hey. Bud has 5 A grade wins to Usyk's 9 A grade wins. I give Bud about 6. But anyway. But yeah. 9 A. Yeah, one could do. But let's see. Ooh, got you, MB. Yeah, no problem, my dog. I caught a lot of heat at Hitman's channel with that comment. Yeah, no, he's definitely a huge Crawford fan. Oh man. Okay, guys, let's see. Because I got more comments that I got to read from some of this. So let's see. T Mizzle 89 on my last video said Canelo's last fight in his prime was Triple G Trilogy. Well, his last fight in his prime, in my view, was against Caleb Plant. But that's the problem. That was a while ago. And Canelo, I do think, was a little bit on the decline. Now, he still was a top 10 pound per pound fighter. I just think that we do have to put that in the right retrospect to where we probably should be comparing that to Hagler versus Leonard, which is one of the greatest wins of all time. Don't get it twisted, but let's not try to pretend like Canelo was at his absolute peak there, because we all know that if that was Usyk or something like that, they would be saying something different. But anyway, Inoue is better, bro. The kickboxer almost beat Usyk. Yeah, Canelo last prime fight was Caleb Plant. Well, I mean, yeah, Verhoeven almost did beat Usyk. That's true, but I also think we have to put the context to where sometimes fighters, they either don't expect that level of fight, or it's just a challenging style, or they just didn't take that opponent seriously. And I mean, so when I take a look at Fury struggling against guys like what's his name, Ngannou, or when I see it, but then I see AJ, who clearly is not the technical boxer of Tyson Fury. When I see him knock him out in 2 rounds, I'm like, okay, I mean, come on. Like, Fury did not look like he took that fight seriously. And when I take a look at Usyk versus Verhoeven, you tell me that he's clearly beating guys like Fury, AJ, Dubois, and these guys at cruiserweight. Never really had a fight that was that particularly close other than the first Tyson Fury fight. And he almost gets beat by a kickboxer. And it's also a coincidence that he's the highest weight he's ever been. He looks doughy around the midsection, literally half the speed that he was in his last fights and all this other stuff. Like, he did not take that fight seriously. And I mean, if we're going to make that point, and don't get it twisted, I mean, Inoue is severely skilled. If he gets a lot of the guys at 126 and also beats Bam, we're debating Inoue possibly about both these guys. But one could also come back and say, well, Inoue was knocked down against both Luis Neri and Roman Cardenas. Crawford and Usyk was never officially knocked down. To be fair, I thought Crawford was officially knocked down against Aegis Kaviaskis. But anyway, but let's see. Very, very guapo. Like the name, by the way. Real question. Do you think Crawford is the best in the modern era? Or is he I'm sorry, the money sign sometimes is like covering up some of this. So I got to anyway. Or just the best at the end of his career. in the. Do you think Crawford is the best in the modern era, or just did his best in the end of his career? I think that's what you're saying. Um, well, when you talk about the best of the modern era, I'm going to say the modern era. It depends on what you claim is like the modern era. I think that Crawford is one of the best of the modern era. When you talk about like the top 10 fighters of the past, let's just count from 2000 onward. Um, well, no, fuck. Yeah, let's just do 2000 onward. So the number one fighter for me would be Floyd Mayweather. I don't think it's a question. Now, when I do this, I'm talking about like combined resume and skill. So I'm not just talking about maybe who'd win in a one-on-one. But Mayweather would be number one. Number two, I think would have to be Manny Pacquiao. Number three after that, that's when it's like, oh, okay, this gets more interesting because you could have Usyk up there, you could have Crawford up there, you could have a couple other names up there. There is also I'm trying to think. Andre Ward, it would be like top 10 for me, probably. I don't think he'd be that high though. He definitely wouldn't be on the Usyk and Crawford level, although he is someone that's an all-time great in my view. Bernard Hopkins also would be great, although I do think he's a bit overrated. De La Hoya would not be on that list for me. Um, Roy Jones, I think he was a bit passive by the time he kind of got into the 2000s, so I'm not really going to mention him. So who are some other fighters that I can mention here? I mean, there's Cotto as well. There's Marquez. I guess De La Hoya did have quite a good career. I'd have to see that, but Crawford's up there. He's up there. You know what I mean? He wouldn't be number one or number two because I think Mayweather and Pacquiao that they're just too accomplished and too good for their eras. But Crawford's like anywhere from like 3 to 5. You know what I mean? So he's up there. But let's see. So let's see what some of these other comments say. This dude, foreign object. These names are fucking hilarious. Crawford's claim to fame boils down to two quickly forgettable non-competitive bouts within fighting only once a year. 15 to 20 years from now, no one will remember him the same way legitimately great fighters who care about giving their fans their money's worth are. And I think there's more to that. Let me see. No one, believe me. Well, I think that Crawford will be remembered decently well. I think that if he was more of a Caucasian fighter or not black fighter, I think that it'd be a little bit worse. Because I oftentimes notice those guys like Joe Calzaghe or Rocky Marciano in 20 years, you know, when their career ends, they're oftentimes not remembered in the same way. But I mean, it is what it is. Crawford, I think, will be remembered well. But I think that his resume always will be a question for anyone who was a part of his era. And I think as long as you have guys like Usyk and Inoue that were around during those eras, I think you always have questions. So I'll just state that much. But yeah, but I do think he is a great fighter, no question. So in terms of the money's worth comment, he gave me my money's worth on a couple of occasions. Not as much as what he probably would have done if he would have signed with the PBC earlier, but you know, is what it is. More bit says Roy Jones is very overrated by the media and the fans. Actually, I think Roy is a little bit underrated these days. Now, the resume wise, at times is a little bit thin. But I think Roy's up there for me. He's top 10 all time for me, just because of what he was able to do. I mean, that man was so talented, so phenomenal. Beat James Toney, beat Bernard Hopkins, beat a few other guys. The person who was really overrated is fucking Bernard Hopkins, in my view. And this is why, like, Bernard, in my view, is on that level of De La Hoya and Tommy Hearns. I don't know why all three of those guys keep getting mentioned in top 10 conversations, because they're not. Anytime they ever fought guys that were similar in size, around that top 5 pound per pound range, and could handle their skill set, they pretty much always fucking lost. You know? So take a look at Bernard. Like, so many of the fucking guys that he fought at middleweight, you don't even remember. Like, don't get me wrong, he did beat some guys. Like, he did beat Mike McCallum. There was another guy, some Jamaican guy. I forget his fucking name. I don't think it was Mike McCallum. It was someone else. I don't remember. But he beat Glenn Johnson. That was his name. Glenn Johnson. He beat Glenn Johnson, who was fine, but kind of was on the top 10 pound per pound list because he beat a version of Roy that was not the same. And Roy was never the same once he moved back down from heavyweight. Never the same. And then he beat Antonio Tarver, which is fine. And he beat Kelly Pavlik. But this is also my thing. It's like, does anyone ever think like, oh, Antonio Tarver, all-time great. Like, no one ever says that. Does anyone ever think that Kelly Pavlik's an all-time great? No. They're very good fighters. And that's also another thing. I remember when so many of these channels were criticizing Canelo for moving up fighters a weight class. Bernard was literally the king of that. Bernard moved up Kelly Pavlik, he moved up Winky Wright, and I think that Felix Trinidad, he also was like a midget compared to him. I don't even count that. Like, I'm sorry, but it is what it is. Let's see. Baron Avola 123 says Jackson. I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure what he's talking about there. But let's see. Or maybe he's talking about one of the fighters that Roy Jones defeated. I'm not sure. Sorry, man. I think I just seen you get in here. Who is your favorite boxer? I have a lot of favorite boxers. I try not to be a fan of anybody because that would ruin my objectivity. But I have a lot of favorite boxers in history. If you're talking about like my top 5 favorite boxers or top 10 favorite boxers to watch of the 2000 era onward, I mean, I've always had a soft spot for Miguel Cotto. He was one of my favorite fighters. I think technically he's one of the more underrated fighters of all time. So Cotto was always up there. Another fight, I mean, you got to like Mayweather. I think if you appreciate boxing, Manny Pacquiao, of course. Canelo, of course, was up there. Terence Crawford, Oleksandr Usyk. I love Inoue as well. Other fighters of the modern era I'm trying to think of. You know a fighter I always loved, although many people always found him boring, and I get it, but Araceli Lara. Lara was always actually one of my favorites because I always thought that he was a defensive master. Other fighters that I would consider my favorite. That's a little bit tougher. Is there any other? I don't know. There's probably a few others. Like I'm probably missing some from like the early 2000s or something. But in terms of like just other fighters to where I'm not quite sure if I put them on top 10, but I just really appreciated like their style. Sugar Shane Mosley was really fun to watch always. Danny Garcia, I always thought that he kind of got a bad rap early days and he really fought anybody. So I'll give him a lot of credit for that. Who's another fighter that I really like watching? I actually do like watching Jamal Charlo quite a bit. It's just really unfortunate what ended up happening with him because he kind of wasted his fucking career. Gennady Golovkin was one of my favorites when he was around. You'll catch me watching Sergio Martinez every once in a while. Carl Frosch actually is kind of, in my view, a little bit underrated these days. He did lose to Mikhail Kessler once, and he also lost to Andre Ward. But the man also beat George Groves. He also beat Mikhail Kessler. He also beat Lucien Boutte. He also beat Jermaine Taylor. And he also beat like a multitude of other names. Like he actually does not have a bad resume. Like Carl Frosch is someone that is a little bit more underrated in my view. You don't get talked about enough unless you're like a Brit. Now, if you're talking about fighters from the older days that were my favorite fighters, Ali, of course, is up there. Rocky Marciano is one of my favorites to watch recently. Really, I've more recently got into him, but I always put him in a high level. Sugar Ray Leonard, of course, Roberto Duran, Tommy Hearns. I wouldn't say he's one of my favorites, but he's a great watch. Trinidad to a degree, Felix Trinidad, but I always thought he was a bit stiff, to be honest. I'm trying to think of Joe Calzaghe. I'll say him, Joe Calzaghe. Who else? Pernell Whitaker, of course, Chavez. Never watched much of Salvador Sanchez, I got to say. I need to watch more of him. But there's a multitude of fighters. But yeah, Lomachenko, of course, is a great watch as well, though, of course, he's more current. There's a lot of fighters I love to watch. But anyway, you have lots of boxing knowledge, respect. Thank you very much, sir. That's why I call myself Boxing Realist. I try my best. I like Roy Jones as a person. He's super humble. Well, to a degree. Roy is, you catch him, beside, probably behind closed doors. He's probably super cocky, but man, that man was phenomenally talented. So, I mean, I have to, I'm not going to go against him. Roy Jones did drop his WBC belt to avoid Graciano Rocha. To be honest, man, I have no idea. I'm still looking into a lot of Roy Jones' career, so I can't tell you. Crawford needs another excellent win. His resume needs more elite boxers. Yeah, well, to me, it depends on what it is. That's why I say, Crawford to me will always be an all-time great. He's always going to be up there. But this is why I say, if he was a Caucasian fighter or an Asian fighter, like in a way, a lot of these LDBC and new media channels would not even put him in the top 30. They wouldn't.
I'm just stating, but he's there, but I also have Usyk there. So, but then if you put Usyk there, who, to be honest, just in my view, has a slightly better resume, they'll tell you that, well, they're trying to promote these white fighters. And it's like, is it really? Or is it like, because AJ and Fury were both kind of looked at as like pound for pound, someone level talents when Usyk defeated them. I'm not going to get in an argument saying that they're quite as skilled, that AJ is quite as skilled as Spence or something, or that, that maybe they're all around as good as Canelo, but let's also be real. It's not like he fought the best version of Canelo. So anyway, I've never seen Hopkins, Oscar, and Hearns in any top 10 talks before. I've seen it way too many times, especially Oscar and Hopkins. Like, it's so fucking ridiculous. I've seen it on so many lists. It's ridiculous. Top 5 favorite boxers to watch. Name it. I think I already kind of got there. James Toney is not an all-time great in my opinion. He's a bit overrated in my view. A bit overrated. He's also another fighter that gets put pretty high. He would not be within my top 30 of all time. He'd probably have to be a tier below guys like Canelo, Hearns, and De La Hoya, to be honest. Just my view. But anyway, there are only a couple-handed elite boxers, A+ as of right now. Well, I think there's also a difference between like S tier and A+. An A+ level boxer that I take a look at, maybe like Virgil Ortiz. A S tier level boxer is someone like Inoue or something like that, Anyway, let's see. Marvin, the scrap was intense from either side. Man, I don't remember some of these fucking. Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. But yeah. James Toney got a lot of gift and robbery wins throughout his career. Honestly, I've never been a huge watcher of James Toney. I always thought he was a bit overrated, although his skill set is impressive. I thought that his skill set and his resume is a tad overrated. It's a little bit overrated. So I can't tell you. Oh yeah, do you think Andre Ward is super good or he's overhyped because he went undefeated? Okay. So Andre Ward is an interesting case. I think that he is an all-time great level fighter. He's a very interesting one because I don't know if his resume is quite as extensive as some others. That being stated, his Mikhail Kessler, Carl Frosch, Sergey Kovalev, and maybe like one other win that I'm forgetting. I think he has like about 4A grade level wins. I would say he has about 4A grade level wins. What I'm also stating is this, because I remember when Canelo was defeating guys like Caleb Plant and Callum Smith, and these guys were like, well, Canelo's beating all these weak European fighters. And it's like, well, Andre Ward did that. So it's like, why is it whenever it comes to like a Caucasian or a non-black fighter, especially with I mean, I know what the answer is, but I mean, the point is that, they're like, well, they're fighting Caucasian guys, but you could have Sugar Ray Robinson or Joe Louis do that for their whole entire fucking career. And they put them like in the top 5 of all time. Like, how does that make any sense? Like, if we're going to do that, start putting Jack Dempsey there. I don't put Jack Dempsey there because you never fought different demographics of fighters because it was like the only the white belts time. So that's why like I but Andre Ward, to answer your question, he's like top 30 to top. He's at least top 50 of all time for me. Great fighter. I personally would put him above Bernard Hopkins. That's my personal view of it. I thought he was extremely skilled. I thought that he was very smart. Also thought he was a dirty bastard. I thought he was debatably, him and Bernard Hopkins, probably the 2 dirtiest fighters that I've ever seen. And I don't like to usually accuse people of that. But there are compilations of, and Andre Ward stated that Bernard Hopkins was one of his role models. And you can tell because he took a lot of the same bitch ass tactics. Head button, charging with his head, low blows, elbows, trying to like get points to that. Like Ward was someone that was extraordinarily talented. He was a little bit of a dirty fucker. He was. And I like Ward. Ward might be the best boxing commentator I've ever seen. But he's someone that he was a little bit of a dirty shit. He was. Anyway. Morby C says, you must have watched the Nordic Warrior video. I remember him. He says, I don't know who that is. More, but once a year I watch McCallum Tony 1. Every jab is contested. That was I do remember watching highlights of that fight. That was a very those are I think they fought twice. That was a very good fight. Hagler, Marvin. Okay. I'd have to see that. Yeah. But Marvin Hagler is he's an all-time great. He's like top 20 in my view. He's great, but the problem with Marvin Hagler, in my view, is like Never moved outside of middleweight, and also the fact that he had such a competitive fight with a guy who probably could have stayed at 135 in Duran, and also the fact that he also did lose to Sugar Ray Leonard. To me, he's like around that range at Canelo, top 30. But yeah, who do you rank higher, Mike Tyson or Tony? Fuck, I would have to say James Tony. I'm not a big fan of Mike Tyson at all these days, and I mean, I'm not a fan of any of these fighters. I just kind of give you guys my analyses. Mike Tyson is actually what got me into boxing. I've also stated this plenty of times before, but Mike Tyson, when we talk about this, is also another thing. Like, I've heard so many talks about like Usyk being like, well, Usyk fought in the weakest heavyweight era. Tyson fought against literal fucking Pringles cans in his era. Name me the champions in his era that would be competitive literally in any other era. Frank Bruno, James Bone Crusher Smith, Tony Tubbs, whatever the fuck his name was. Like this man fought bum after bum after bum. And whenever he fought an elite level fighter, or a fighter that even just fought back against him, he lost. James Buster Douglas, although to be fair, I don't think that he was quite focused in that fight. I think that he heavily underestimated him. But the point is that if he fought Evander, who, by the way, was not looked to be the same, he was looked at as a guy that was a little bit more worn down because he lost to Riddick Bowe at that point by knockout, by the way. So, I mean, that and had a grueling trilogy. And I think even lost to, what the fuck was his name? Who is it? Who is that man that Michael Moore? That's his name, Michael Moore. Boy who fucking lost to George Foreman and when he was the champion. But yeah, anyway. But James Toney, and I think James Toney is a tad bit overrated, but he's above Mike Tyson. Tyson is, other than Michael Spinks, man, literally beat no other great fighters. Anyway, Usyk's resume is clearly the best. As of right now, I agree. See, very guapo says so many praise him as a super good, as one of the best records. They put him aside Floyd. Him and Floyd. It's been so long now, Guapo. You're gonna have to put the name next to it. I'm assuming that you're talking about Andre Ward because I think it was you who sprung the question. Let me look it up. Yeah, okay. So I'm assuming you're talking about Andre Ward. Ward is very good. He's a great fighter. I don't think he's quite up there with Mayweather. I just don't think he has inough. He's around the level of like Hopkins, Canelo, and some of those guys for me. That's where he is. But you could debate that he's slightly over them. But let's see. Inoue and Crawford are close, but if he wins a couple of the titles at featherweight, Inoue's that's going to be a thing that a lot of the Crawford fans are not going to want to admit. But I would agree with you. If he beats Carrington, if he beats Angelo Leo, if he beats Figueroa, if he beats those three fighters combined with a Bam Rodriguez win, that conversation is kind of over, in my personal view. And I know that people once again will be like, what about Espinoza? He has to beat Espinoza. To me, that's a non-factor because Espinoza is so much fucking bigger. That would be like, Crawford once again fighting David Benavidez, Anyway, let's see. Sorry, excuse me. Whew. Anyway, if Inoue beats Bam, it's over. The conversation with Bud, he wins over it. I'm not going to claim that it's over necessarily if he beats Bam because Crawford's win over Canelo was just, but that being stated though, Inoue has been out of his element for a while. But if he does clean out most of 126, then in my view, you could debate that Inoue's over him. But let's see. Hagler's best middleweight win is old Benny Briscoe. To be honest with you, I can't necessarily tell you. I remember his win over John Mugabe, though. I remember that being a big win at the time. But anyway, Carlos Monsoon is better than Hagler at middleweight. He also can be a little bit underrated at times. Yeah, Andre Ward. Yeah, thought so. All right. But yeah, good comments. So let's see. What else people are talking about? Bud fans always view their poor little Bud as victim that people just hate on. Yes, I agree. And that's what most fanboys tend to do. But the Bud fans, especially unfortunately, because of the demographic that mainly follows him, they always have to take it to the racialist angle. They always think that, which is why you have to be careful with what certain people, when they say that, oh, well, Crawford's getting blackballed, you have to truly be careful what you actually believe. If he beats Boots, he's arguably top 5. Yeah, I mean, many people would debate Crawford top 5 right now, but my thing is like, if Crawford was a Caucasian fighter, I think a lot of people would be taking a look at his career and be like, well, this man only has about 6 A grade level wins. And so why should we put him top 5? I already stated people that if Crawford was a Caucasian fighter, they would be looking under him under a microscope a lot more. Let's see. if Canelo beats him Beatley, does his ranking increase? In terms of all time, not really for me. I think Canelo's legacy is kind of already set. That Crawford fight was very important for him, and I think that him losing that pretty much. Now, De La Hoya also similarly lost to Mayweather, and also uh, I think like Shane Mosley, and a lot of people would also debate that he lost to Whitaker. The reason why Canelo, although he lost to Mayweather and Crawford, for me, the reason why is because Crawford, I think, was more similar in size to Canelo than what Whitaker or Chavez was compared to what they were to De La Hoya. And also, Canelo proved that he could beat like legit A grade level fighters that were bigger than him consistently, even if they were just A minus, that were skilled, and also beat guys that were like at times top 5 pound per pound like Golovkin in the rematch and could beat them. I don't know if De La Hoya would have ever done that. And I like De La Hoya. He is a great fighter. He's just massively overrated. But let's see. Yeah, but so to me, no, he would still be around that Tommy Hearns, and the only way that Canelo's ranking increases is if he actually does rematch, but and beats him, which I don't see happening. But we'll see. Yeah, race is so big on boxing, sadly. Yeah, I agree. It's very unfortunate, but that's how it is. It's a part of the sport. Jaron Ennis hasn't faced any punches at 147 and 154. I mean, Stanionis is a little bit of a puncher. He's fine. But I think that, people like it also depends on the style. And when you take a look at Stanionis, he's very talented, but he fights in one way. He can't really change his game up. He's got the regular high guard, straightforward, European style. Very good at what he does, but no one really thought that he was going to beat Boots. So, and Xander is very good, but his power is maybe B plus to A minus at best. So, I agree. Do you think Crawford dominated Canelo? People say that they beat him so bad. Is it true? I think that he clearly beat him. I think that Crawford beat him either 7 rounds to 5 or 8 rounds to 4. I don't think that it was as far apart as what some other people tried to state. And look, we all know that, the LDBC and the media channels, we all know that, they're going to be like, Crawford beat him 11 rounds to 1 or 12 to 0. We all know that's not true. But he clearly beat him. And for Canelo, clearly having the weight advantage and Crawford never being there, it should have not ended like that if Canelo was going to be the greater fighter at the end of the day. I don't think it was quite as down. I actually thought the judges got it right. I thought it was 8-4, 7-5. But I thought Crawford won clearly at the end of the day. When it comes to judging greatest, guys like Golovkin, Spence, Canelo, and Pernell Whitaker are the greats that are overrated to me. Golovkin I could see just because he does not have a resume, but that also being stated, I don't really see Golovkin in any conversations. So that's why to me, when I take a look at overrated fighters, I either take a look at people that rank them so fucking highly currently or put them in all-time great conversations. I think you can debate at one time that Golovkin was overrated, especially being number 1 pound per pound, and he was never unified, although that's not completely his fault, and also the best wins that he ever had was Lemieux and Danny Jacobs in a draw against Canelo. But the point is that, yeah, resume definitely overrated. But in terms of all-time great conversation, I don't really know where I would rank Golovkin. That would be an interesting conversation. I don't think I could really, for sure, comfortably put him in my top 50 of all time. That being stated, one could debate that he has the most success in middleweight. So I don't know. It depends on your perspective. Let's see. Spence. Maybe a tad bit, but I don't think anyone's really going to put him there either. So that's why I say Canelo. For a time now, I think it looks worse now with the Crawford loss, but Canelo is a top 30, top 40 guy. Well, he's right there with Hearns and Bernard Hopkins for me. That's where he is. Pernell Whitaker. That actually is an interesting point because to be honest with you, I don't really know a lot about Whitaker's resume. I'd have to look more into it, but he's also an art fighter that's kind of put in the top 20 of all time, but it's how many people can really name 5 fighters that he really beat, actually? I think he beat one Puerto Rican cat that was pretty good. He also, of course, obviously should have got the win over Chavez, but they kind of robbed him there. Anyway, but let's see. Back on the Inoue convo, is there any fight that you'd say is a good idea to rematch within the next year? That's interesting. Personally, I would like to see a rematch with Nakatani. I felt that Nakatani wasn't ready. I don't really think I need to see a rematch of that. I think that if there's going to be a rematch of Nakatani, that maybe if Jesse, and we're going to get into this soon because this is also going to be this was originally supposed to be a conversation about Inoue and Jesse, and if Jesse is avoiding Inoue, and in my view he is, but we'll talk about why, because there was a comment that was very. We're actually going to talk about that in the next 5 minutes, because I'm going to go to another one of my videos real quick, and I will let's see. Interesting. I fucking go to Google to go to YouTube, and there's an article put up of Errol Spence that says me and Mayweather are neck and neck in terms of work ethic. Yeah, sure looks like it. Anyway, okay. I don't think I really need to see a Nakatani rematch. The only way I really need to see a rematch is like if I think that many people are calling for it. I mean, there are a lot of people calling for it, but it's like, is this something we really need to see? I thought it was competitive, but I thought that it was really competitive in spots where like in a way it was like, kind of stepping off the gas a little bit. I don't think that it was really a fight to where it was that competitive to where it needed a rematch, in all honesty, just my view of it. I thought Inoue won clearly 8 rounds to 4. I thought the rounds that he did lose, I thought that he was kind of taking them off. So I mean, it's not really a fight that I need to see a rematch for. I think if Nakatani wants a rematch, that maybe he can fight Bam Bam Rodriguez. If Bam decides to fight him, and if he can beat Bam, then maybe they have a rematch. Anyway, he lost stupidly to Trinidad. Yeah, he's talking about Oscar there. That was a fight that I thought Oscar clearly could have won. I thought he was the all-around better fighter, but he also didn't do a whole lot in the final 4. So I don't blame the judges. For the pressure and the head Nakatani and then go against Inoue. As for Inoue after the Bam fight, I'd suggest Nick Ball. Let me know what you think. Honestly, man, the fight that I'm really excited to see, I really want to see Angelo Leo. Brandon Figueroa would be another one. I'd love to see Angelo Leo as an introductory fight for him. Nick Ball would be interesting. I would love to see the Nick Ball and Brandon Figueroa rematch, because Nick Ball was winning that fight until literally like the last round he gets knocked out. So I would love to see that. But yeah, Nick Ball would be a great first fight though, because that would be an A-grade fight. Oscar, yeah, no, I know what you were saying, Mr. Bernavol. Stanionis did go life and death against Thomas Delorme. Yes, and Thomas Delorme is a B grade level fighter at best. Y-Dash says, for the pressure and head clash, I feel he had a lot more to offer. But to be honest, I'd rather Bam fight Nakatani than go against. Same thing that I was thinking. So let me state this. And a part of the reason why I don't think there needs to be a rematch is because it also depends to me. Oh, drop my remote here. It also depends to me how much effort you put in there. And Nakatani, I do think, gave Inoue a challenge. I don't think it was enough. And what I mean by that is that I think in the first half of that fight, especially within the first several rounds, Nakatani was kind of not throwing a whole lot. He wasn't really, and I think that you could tell even after the fight, the way that he reacted to the loss, I think that he knew, like, at least I took Inoue to a very like competitive fight. At least, we made it competitive. And that's not how you win a fight. Like that's not how you win against the best of the best. And that's why, to me, it's like the first 5 rounds I thought clearly went to Inoue, if not even the first 6, because Nakatani literally was like not fucking throwing anything within those first 5 rounds. So that's why, to me, it's like, I just don't need to see it. If he can prove himself against a couple of other guys, sure. But right now, there are bigger fish to fry for Inoue. I don't think we need to see it. But anyway, let's see. Canelo isn't overrated. Took so many chances. Yeah, I would agree that Canelo is an all-time great level fighter. He's someone that, like I said, is top 30 of all time for me. But let's see. Because I'm over here rewatching this fight with Billy Joe Saunders. Yeah, that was a version of a prime Canelo. And Billy Joe was actually a very talented fighter. He never fought again after that Canelo fight, by the way. But yeah. It's sad that we never got Golovkin versus Pirog. Yeah, Dmitry Pirog was I think he was Russian. So many people use Dmitry Pirog, against Golovkin because, they're trying to kind of appease to certain Caucasian fan bases. They're like, man, if Pirog was around, there would have been no Golovkin. I'm not quite sure about that. Now, Pirog did outbox Danny Jacobs. Let's also keep in mind that was a Danny Jacobs to where he was a little bit more raw in his skill set. He was a little bit more untested. But Pirog was a bad boy. There's no question about that. Pirog was a bad SOB. He was someone that knew what he was doing. He was a fantastic fighter. and I would have loved to see more. But of course, he retired undefeated, I think, and only a one-time champion because he had like real bad back issues, so he had to retire early. The back will get you. But yeah, let me switch my other video also real quick. Yes, and that's the comment. So let's see. Bam slash Robert Garcia are playing the waiting game versus Inoue. Bam versus Inoue is closest to Sanchez slash Gomez, but only if it happens now. I honestly think it's even a little bit different because I thought that Gomez was a little bit smaller than Sanchez. I don't think Bam is really smaller than Inoue. Inoue started off at like what 105 or something like that. Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez started off heavier than that. So I mean, the point is that, and just because you start off at a weight class does not always mean that you actually naturally belong there. But if you take a look at Inoue, like back in those weight classes, like he's literally 105. Like he literally is that. He's only naturally kind of built up more of a 118 type of frame. That's really what he is. He's not really anything above that. And Jesse, when you take a look at him at 115, he's bigger than everyone else there. Like he needed to move up a while ago. And that's a part of the reason why I'm kind of putting, why I put a little bit more pressure on him. Anyway, but let's see. I'll respond to a few more comments and then we'll go down. It sucks that Keyshawn Davis duck Haney. It seems like he knew Haney will slightly beat him. Well, yeah, I don't know enough about it, to be honest with you. I thought maybe there was a possibility that maybe Keyshawn was like 3 million. Like, I feel like I could get more. And maybe he did, but it's like, apparently you were talking all this shit about how you're going to fight Haney, and it's a humongous fight. And then you get offered the fight, apparently for your biggest payday, and you don't take it. Now, I understand that maybe you want more money for a fight of that magnitude, so maybe it was just that. I don't know. But it's definitely a bad fucking look. Anyway, Sanchez is one of the best Mexican boxers. Absolutely. Bam is on snack. That's why I truly believe he will beat Inoue. I wouldn't be shocked. That's a 50-50 fight in my view. Yoan Lee Hernandez versus Francisco Veron is an interesting fight. I mean, I've heard of Hernandez. I'm not familiar with the other guy, but yeah. But let's see. One more comment, and then I'm gonna read some of the comments here because we're not gonna switch to the Inoue Rodriguez conversation, and then we'll go back to Crawford. Do you think Caleb Plant still got stuff in his tank? If so, who would you want him to fight? I honestly, the Caleb Plant train, I think left once he lost to Resendez or whatever the fuck that one fighter's name is. First of all, rematch Resendez. Let's see what you can do against him, and if you can beat him, Jaime Munguia would be a great fight. Jamal Charlo. That's really the fight that everyone's kind of looking forward to is Jamal Charlo versus him. But Caleb Plant kind of fucked it up. And Plant is very skilled at his best, but he's someone that's not impenetrable. And sometimes he's someone that, can kind of make too many mistakes. Anyway, Dimitri Pirog did go the distance against Nobuhiro Ishida. Golovkin stopped Ishida under 4 rounds. That's not a bad point. I mean, obviously, just because, someone goes the distance with someone doesn't always mean that it's, that there's still not a bad style for someone, but we don't know how that fight would have ever ended up. So, but Golovkin was a bad boy. He was a great fighter. Let's see. So I wanted to address this comment because I also made a video the other day talking about Inoue versus Bam Rodriguez. Now, in my view, is Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez avoiding Naoya Inoue? Yes, he is. Now, let me address this comment that someone made here because I understand what he's trying to say, but I'll tell you why I don't judge this the same way. So let's see. So this person says, why didn't anyone pressure Inoue when he was at 115 and 118 to jump up to 122 to fight Navarrete? Talking about Emmanuel Navarrete. When Navarrete was 122 and the champ, is it fair to say Inoue wanted no parts of Navarrete? And let's see what else he said. He said, we both know Inoue wanted no parts. We both know Navarrete would have beaten Inoue to a pulp. Now, of course, he's being a little bit facetious there. He's, putting a little bit extra on there saying like, well, why is it fair to judge Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez, to jump up 2 weight classes when we don't do this with other fighters? Here's my thing with Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez. Anyone who knows me knows that just because you start off at a certain weight class does not mean that you belong at that weight class forever. When you take a look at Devin Haney, there was no fucking way that he was going to be at 147 for the rest of his goddamn career. And I've stated this for a very decently long time. When you take a look at Canelo Alvarez, there's no way that he was going to be at 154 for the rest of his career. When you take a look at Terence Crawford, there was no way he was going to be, at 135 or hydrating at like 160 to 165 for the rest of his career. There's no fucking way. Being 5'8" with like a 72 to 74-inch arm reach, even at the time. When I take a look at Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez, him and Inoue are pretty much the exact same fucking size. And when you take a look at Bam Bam Rodriguez, he's like what, 5'4", 5'5" with like a 67, 68-inch arm reach, something like that. And then on top of that, you look bigger than everyone else there, dude. And there's been so many comments about, well, Bam, man, he balloons up in weight during training camps and all that other stuff. And you're at 115. You're bigger than Juan Francisco Estrada. You're bigger than a lot of these fucking guys. And it's like, you don't really seem to be going for undisputed that hard. You're pretty much just fighting these guys that a lot of people don't know. And it's not like you're going for undisputed. It kind of seems like you're just dragging your feet. Why? And I think the reason why is because he knew that if he went up one weight class, and there are certain fighters that do this. This is not the first time that it's happened in history. This is not the last time it'll happen in history. There are certain fighters that will not fucking move up, overall, because they realize that if they move up too many weight classes, people are going to be like, why don't you fight that guy? Because you're only one weight class away. And that's the thing about Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez, in my personal view. Him and his team waited there for so fucking long because they knew that Inoue was going to eventually become an issue. And, people are like, well, Jesse, I think that he wanted the fight. I think that he wanted this. It's just that Robert Garcia is in charge and he's not going to let. I don't believe that. I believe that's horse shit, and whoever believes that, I mean, hey, all the better to you. I could be wrong. I just don't fucking believe it. And the reason why is because I'm a big believer in deciphering, people's stuff with what they're saying and what they truly mean. And oftentimes, because I like, the psychology aspect. I like, deciphering what someone is truly saying. And oftentimes it's almost kind of like someone, committing the crime or lying to you. Like, if someone like cheated on you or something, like if you can tell someone cheated, they'll tell you with little hints. They may not like admit it straight out, but they may be like, yeah, well, if I did cheat, like, overall, this in my personal view, like, isn't even that bad. It's like, okay, well, why would you say that in that situation? It's kind of the same thing, like for me with Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez. Every time that I see him talking about Inoue in the past, when people ask him the question, he's like, well, I'm not really concerned about fighting Inoue. That's not a fight I'm looking forward to. Yeah, maybe I'll fight him at the end of his career, or something like that. And it's like every time it's like, okay, well, if you were seriously worried about that fight, why would you say all that shit? That doesn't make any sense, And then when he's asked recently, and when I knew 100% for sure that Jesse was not interested, Chris Mannix literally asked him after Antonio Vargas recently, and he said, are you interested in the Inoue fight? And Jesse was like, yeah, well, and then Chris Mannix had to ask him again. He said, are you interested, overall, once again, in the Naoya Inoue fight? And Jesse was like, yeah, well, yeah, because he basically had to force him into it. To where Jesse was like, yeah, well, if we're ready for that fight, blah, 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 all this sort of stuff, it's up to my corner. Basically saying like, not really. But, in order to keep the fans off my ass, then yeah, I'm going to do that. So that's what I mean. People will tell you what they're truly trying to say, but in an indirect way. And you have to kind of catch them overall with really what they're saying. They'll tell you, but you have to know how to read in between the lines. That's what Jesse Bam Bam does. Every time Inoue is brought up, it's always, well, I'm not really thinking about that fight. I'm not this, I'm not that. The only reason why he's only changed his mind more recently is because the fans are on his ass. And him and his team knew that eventually that they'd be like, well, you're staying at 115. There's no one that you're fucking fighting there. You're not going for undisputed. What the fuck are you doing there? Like, just move up to 118. Here's the problem. If you would have moved up to 118 years ago, this fight would have been called for a lot fucking sooner because there's also no one at 118. Like, who the fuck is there? Like, he's fighting Medina next, the guy who already has 4 losses. And there are some guys that, like Marlon Tapales, for example, he had like 5 losses, I think, before he fought Inoue, or like 2 for whatever the fuck it was. I think like 2 losses or something like that. Tapales actually improved his game. So don't get it twisted. There are certain fighters that actually have multiple losses. Yordenis Ugas is a great example. He's someone that, actually had multiple losses and eventually improved. But the point over Pacquiao as well. But I mean, the point overall is that there's no one there at 118, man. Like, and then this is also the other thing, like, all of a sudden they're moving up and they're trying to play this game and they playing this in their head to where it's like, oh, well, we want Inoue, but we need 1 or 2 more fights, blah, 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 and they're going to make it seem like, because they know damn well that Inoue has been planning to move up to 126 for the past 1.5 to 2 years. So what's going to happen is that Inoue may move up and they may be like, well, we gave Inoue our terms and blah, 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 like all this are bullshit. Like, please. You could have moved up a very long fucking time ago. There was no one at 118. You were not trying to go for undisputed. And what's so funny now is that all of a sudden Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez, you know, all of a sudden he's super interested in undisputed. You know, he fought Antonio Vargas, and as soon as Inoue was like, okay, you know what? I'll give you a deadline until February or March. Bam, fucking Bam immediately all of a sudden is interested in undisputed and is going to fight fucking Christian Medina next for one of the titles at 118. Isn't that interesting? I've never seen Bam move that fast in terms of an undisputed fight. Never. But all of a sudden, when it comes to an Inoue fight, man is moving like the fucking Flash. So, like I said, it's very clear to me what is happening. And he could have moved up a while ago. That to me is the most important thing. He could have moved up a while ago. The reason why the Inoue and the Navarrete thing is not comparable is because no one ever said that those guys were comparable in size. No one has ever, like, Inoue started off at like 105 or whatever fucking weight class it was. You know, Navarrete, I believe the weight class he probably started off with was fucking 122, you know, or wherever he started off with. So that I understand what he's trying to state, but a better comparison would be like Devin Haney fighting someone at like 140 or 147. That would be something that's a little bit more comparable. But it's clear that Jesse is like really stretching this out and wearing it thin. And it's like, bro, like, who's there? There's no one fucking there. Like, there's no one there at 118. And after a while, it's like, bro, you're not going for undisputed. So we know that's not what you're motivated for. That's point A. Point B, you're bigger than everyone else there. And point C, no one fucking there is important to fight. Like, who else is there? You fought everyone. So that's my point. And that's why, like, you know, they're making it for November. So if Inoue moves out, they'll be like, oh, well, you know, Inoue, we gave him the opposite. Like, bullshit. You knew that Inoue overall. First of all, he gave you the date. You know, he gave you the month that that overall that, you know, he said, you know, I'm not going to wait for your ass. You know, I've been wanting to move up to 126. I'm 34 years old. I ain't waiting on you. You know, if eventually you want to go up there, cool. But I'm not waiting on you. I have plans, you know, but anyway, but let's see. And let me also address this because I did um I did a video not too long ago, excuse me. I did a video not too long ago reviewing a video by Aki TV talking about this. It was actually, I think, like my third video or something like that. And I was saying, like, Inoue called out Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez. What you're noticing what Aki TV and some of these channels are doing, they're saying, like, Jesse Bam Bam, like, you can't be top 10 pound per pound and avoiding these guys. And it's like, well, at least Jesse has fought a few guys. No offense. But, like, those channels need to be going after guys like Keyshawn Davis and Shakur Stevenson. Are they keeping it? Because didn't they claim that Shakur was like number one pound per pound recently, and the man's like literally not fighting fucking anyone right now. Man won't fight Ryan Garcia. Man won't fight Devin Haney. Man won't fight Keyshawn Davis. Man won't fight any of those fucking guys. But like, this is what I mean. Apparently, Canelo or some of these other guys can't be number one because they were ducking. Well, then no problem. Put Inoue number one then. You know, put Inoue number one because apparently, because we all know Inoue's not ducking anybody. He's fought everybody. You know, that he's needed to anyway. They haven't always been A-grade level fighters, but he's fought everybody that he's needed to, and he called out everybody that he's needed to, and he's actually got big fights that he's needed to. You know, so I mean, call out Shakur, because other than Teofimo Lopez, what other fucking, you know, and Williams Zepeda, what other confirmed A-grade wins does he really have? Not a whole lot. So I mean, it is what it is. Anyway, but we'll read more. Very Guapo says, true, Devin Haney way too big. Yes, he was. Which is why and let me also address this. Sorry, guys. I got to take a drink of tea real quick. My throat is burning up. I'm just doing nothing but bitching on this podcast right now. All right. It's cold. Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. Anyway, sorry. Talking to my wife, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. But yeah, for warm tea, to be honest, but that's all right. Let's see. And Loma slightly beat Haney. You know, I thought it was a fight that could have won either way. But talking about Devin Haney real quick before I move on more into this Inoue and Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez conversation. Devin Haney, to me, like, I like him, but I don't think you can debate him as number one. And not only because of the Ryan Garcia situation, because, I mean, he got absolutely fucking embarrassed. I don't care if Ryan Garcia was on steroids that turned him into LeBron James. I don't give a shit. At the end of the day, when you're a fighter that was looked at as a guy that really was not that high caliber in terms of like superstardom and like, you know, athletic ability, but in terms of like what he could actually do all around boxing wise, I mean, like, That would be like if Inoue lost to someone like a Lewis Neri or someone probably even worse, to be honest with you, someone who was a lot less acclaimed. Although one could debate that Ryan Garcia is more talented than Lewis Neri, but that's like if Inoue, I mean, like, I don't even know how to compare it. That'd be like if Inoue lost to an A- level fighter or someone like that around those weight classes and like they were on steroids. Like, yeah, okay, they were on steroids, but it's like you should have not lost. Like, I can understand if they're like Javante Tank Davis or something or Lomachenko, but Ryan Garcia, like, and that was the only fighter that you've ever fought that was similar in physicality to you. That's why Devin Haney kind of has to lose some points for me. And I would have that same standard for any of those fighters. I don't care who they are. So I mean, it just is what it is. But Devin Haney, although I like him a lot, and he's someone that uh calls out everybody. He's willing to fight everybody. I've always given him credit for that. And he has been avoided by multiple fighters. It seems right now, Shakur, to a degree, at least at 147, he definitely was avoided by Teofimo in my personal view. And Lomachenko did give up his title early on, in his career to not fight him as well. To be fair, though, I think that it was relatively fair because Haney was kind of a little bit more unknown and on the come up and not as well known. And to be fair, he fought Teofimo shortly after that. So I'm not going to judge Loma too much for that. But I think he also knew the threat that Devin Haney was. But Devin Haney, when we take a look at him, the best one of his career to this day still is Lomachenko. The problem with that is that Lomachenko A was 37 years old, although he was still debatably top 10 at the time for many people. And he's also about 2 weight classes lower than Devin Haney, man. Like, Devin Haney is not a natural 135 pounder, and neither is Lomachenko. Lomachenko's like a natural 130 pounder at least, at a max. And one could debate that he's even a natural 126 pounder. Haney's like a natural 147 pounder, man. That's why I say that fight is comparable to like De La Hoya versus Chavez for me. And Haney couldn't even really decisively beat Lomachenko. And when we take a look at a lot of those other guys, I mean, we have like who else? We have Regis Prograis. I mean, it's fine. But it's like I'm not gonna say Regis Prograis is anything other than an A- level fighter. And then you have a couple of other guys, I mean, like Brian Norman is cool, but I think he's B plus for me. He's not fantastic. I don't see him beating anyone elite. There's just no one elite at 147 right now. So I mean, other than Haney. So I mean, the point is that other than that, it's like, what does he have? I mean, I'll give him George Kambosos. That's like A-, but I don't think anyone expected George Kambosos. I don't think anyone expected him, to do much after that. So I mean, it is what it is. But anyway, him and Bam are ready to fight. He's 26. He's ready. Well, I think anyways, ready to fight. I don't think Bam's ready. I mean, like in terms of the all around, yeah, I think he's ready, but you gotta set the fight. So I mean, anyway, this guy's very guapo says you're so smart. Yeah, if you did cheat, meaning they cheated. So yeah, you're right. Agreed. Yeah, thank you for that. Anyway, exactly. Bam is ducking like crazy. It's obvious. Agreed. Robert Garcia said they haven't sent him the contract. He said he's ready to fight in front of the yeah, whatever. And that's why they also called out Javante Tank Davis. I don't think a lot of people understand this, and I'm going to review some of these other comments as well. I don't think a lot of people really understand this, but there are certain fighters that they'll call out a fighter that is way above them in terms of weight in order to get that heat off of them for a fighter that is similar in size. So, and people, because I remember when Mikey Garcia did this to Errol Spence, people didn't understand what Mikey was doing. That's a complete deflection and redirection tactic. The reason why they're doing that is because they're like, well, I really don't want to fight this guy that's in my own same weight class. And in Mikey Garcia's case, it was Vasyl Lomachenko. He said, I really don't want to fight Vasyl Lomachenko because if I lose to this guy, I'm not going to have an excuse as to why I lost because this guy is the same size as me or possibly even a little bit smaller, and he's a big threat. But if I go up to 147, fight Spence, if I beat him, no one's ever going to question me. And on top of that, if I lose, whatever. I was brave. I was courageous. I dared to be great, which is really just a whole bunch of bullshit. But it tricks a lot of the fans into saying, well, how can he be afraid to fight Lomachenko? He's moving up 2 weight classes to fight Spence, someone who's one of the top power. What people don't understand is that it's not about all the time who you're facing. It's about the excuse. It's about, because if Mikey was going to lose to Spence, which of course he absolutely did, he got his ass whooped. But the point is that who the fuck is going to say, man, Mikey, I can't believe you lost to Spence. Like, no one's going to say that. That's not going to impact your legacy anywhere near as much as if you lose to a Vasyl Lomachenko. is not going to. And it's the same thing here, overall with that of a Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez. That's why they're bluffing a little bit, being like, oh, I'll fight Gervonta Tank Davis. I'm telling you this, I bet Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez may be a little bit more comfortable facing Gervonta Tank Davis, or at least overall is trying to do that to deflect the fans. Because that way the fans can be like, because they're starting to catch on, like, okay, Jesse, why have you not moved up by now? There's no one there. You're not going for unification. Why the fuck are you not moving up? And then on top of that, every time you've been at, like, I've been on Jesse's ass for the past couple of years, and I like Jesse. He's a great fighter, but he's never been interested in this fight. So I mean, the point is that the reason why he's calling out Gervonta Tank Davis, it's a complete deflection tactic, so his fans can say, well, he's not afraid in a way, because why would he be willing to fight Gervonta Tank Davis? It's a complete deflection tactic, even if he was. Is the same thing Mikey did with Errol Spence. Because if I move up a couple weight classes and actually beat that guy, I'm on top of the world, and no one's going to question me anyway. And then my legacy, is something completely different. And then, if I do end up losing to that guy, oh, shucks, Sorrell was just courageous. And then if I am forced into a corner to fight that guy, I can just make an excuse 10 years later on down the line and state that, well, I was never quite the same, after I ended up losing to that welterweight guy, or that guy that was 2 weight classes heavier than me. It was a mistake. I was never the same when I fought Inoue or when I fought Lomachenko. Those fighters think along those lines. And that's so they can look at themselves in the mirror and also tell their fan base, that's why I lost that fight. So they can have an excuse. They can't live with themselves if they were at their peak or at their prime form and tell their fans or themselves or tell the world, I lost to a man that was better than me. Kell Brook did the same shit with Errol Spence. And what did Kell Brook do 10 years later on down the line? Exactly what I predicted. Well, I wasn't the same after the Golovkin fight. So that's what those fighters think of, that they think along those lines. But anyway, Eddie Hearn and Bam don't want that smoke, unfortunately. And I love Bam to death, man. Bam is a fantastic fighter. And if there's a fighter that has a great chance of defeating Inoue, that is from 122 or under, it's Bam. He's really the only one that has a chance at those weight classes. And possibly may even favor Bam in that fight. I don't know, because that's a 50-50 level fight. That's a fantastic fight. But Bam needs to be willing to take the fight. And I know that certain people are like, well, Robert Garcia's in charge. To me, you can only use that excuse for so long. And every time, the truth is that every time they've asked Bam, are you interested in that fight? He's told them fucking flat out, no. He's told them, I'm not thinking about that fight. So I mean, it just is what it is. That's the way that I see it. Anyway, but let's see. Inoue's team could spend some money on influencers to pressure Bam. It's worth it. A little payola goes a long way. Well, that's the thing. I actually think that Inoue would benefit a lot from fighting Bam. I don't think Inoue believes that he needs him. And I think that that's a little bit of a mistake, because I think that Inoue actually would benefit a lot from defeating such a young Mexican-American talent in Bam, because he'll be looked at as probably the biggest one in his career. And I think that would take Inoue to the next level. That would take Inoue from a superstar to debatably the biggest star in the sport. I think that that's a huge win. And I think that that's probably a bigger win than any of the wins at 126. And I think that it's also important because if Inoue, let's just say, for example, that if he loses his next fight at 126, because let's be honest, he's not getting any younger, and he's also a decent amount smarter than a lot of those guys. And if he never defeats Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez, his career is going to be like, okay, he was great, but his resume just is still a little bit lacking. And there's a possibility that if he loses, it's never going to be the same. So anyway, but yeah. John Sean Boxing says Aki still has Tank on his pound for pound list. Tank hasn't been on my top 10 pound for pound list for years. I'm tired of hearing about that motherfucker. That dude is one of the biggest cherry pickers of all time. And I like Tank. Tank is a extraordinarily talented fighter, especially physically. But like I've heard people call Mayweather, Canelo cherry pickers. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that at times that there were certain, fights that they maybe could have not took. That's cool. But Tank has literally fought nothing other than these B-grade like Latino fighters that are like one-dimensional, like Rolly and Isaac Cruz and Ryan Gard. Like, give me a fucking break. Anyway, I forgot to say, do you think starting at 5 years old in boxing versus some boxers like 16, 17, starting late, Rolly and Conor Ben, does it affect them? I would definitely say so. Most of the boxers that you see that ended up being the greatest of all time, they started off pretty early on, and I think it gives you more confidence. I think it also gives you an opportunity to see a little bit more. Now, that being stated, of course, are there exceptions to the rule? Yeah. One thing that people don't know about Oleksandr Usyk, actually, from what I know, is that actually he started off at age 15. he was actually hugely into soccer before that. A lot of people don't know that. He started at 15. Because I remember when AJ lost to him, especially the second time. And the reason why he was so frustrated in that is because AJ thought that, kind of like the Ruiz one, that he could, go with a different coach and, overall do this and this, and then overall kind of adjust it. And then when he lost that fight, he was so pissed after that and so mentally distraught because he was like, man, wow, I actually did all this and I still fucking lost that fight. That sucks. So, I mean, yeah, I kind of understand why he was so upset, but it depends. I mean, there's just always going to be those people that are just absolutely phenomenal at what they do. But I mean, the point is that I definitely think starting early helps out a lot more. And you notice that the people that usually start late, whether it be AJ Wilder or some of the other guys, George Foreman, they usually have a little bit more technical flaws. Rocky Marciano started pretty late as well, but that era was a bit different. It wasn't as uncommon then. But a lot of people also don't know this about Rocky. Rocky started boxing at like 26. And the fact that he was able to do what he was able to do with kind of how raw his skill set was at times, a little bit how like, rocky his skill set was at times, like it not always being up to par. It was a little bit impressive what he was able to do. Anyway, but let's see. Ryan Garcia used Haney dirty tactics against him. I do believe there's a possibility that Devin Haney that he is on PEDs because he is with the snack program. Just my view. I've always stated that, and I know a lot of people would do that. Disagree, but anyway, boxers are smart. They look at their size and ready to fight to take advantage tactics. I agree. Loma has top 3 best skills. I know his size is small, but he has elite skills. And then Mr. McGay or Miyagi. It says Mr. Miyagi. Yo. I'm sorry, man. He said salute. I love this channel. Oh God. Oh man. Unsubscribed, I'm sure, after that. Sorry about that. Oh man. Loma is very skilled. He is extremely skilled. I would have loved to have seen him fight at 130 more. Like I would have loved to have seen him fight some other guys. I would have loved to seen him fight Peak Tank. I would have loved to seen him fight some of those other guys. Pete Cambosis, although he still did beat probably an okay version of Cambosis, but probably not the same. I'm trying to think. I would have loved to seen him fight a lot of those guys. I would have loved to seen Lomachenko versus guys like Barrera, Morales, and Pacquiao and some of those other guys. I'm not going to say Lomachenko's like top 3, but he's a very skilled fighter. He is a borderline all-time great fighter for me, especially with the titles he was able to win in such a short amount of time in 3 weight classes. It's pretty phenomenal. Anyway, but let's see. You spitting facts tonight. Thank you, sir. I always spit facts every night, sir. Every night. Thank you. Imagine if the band fight happens. Imagine if Inoue brings Loma in for sparring. Oof, that'd be a tough one. Man. Yeah, Jesse, I forget that Jesse was always I think he always stated that he was a bit looked up to Loma. He does fight a lot like Lomachenko. Like he's kind of like the improved version of Lomachenko. That's an interesting fight. I'm actually going to do a video. I actually will probably put a donation spot on my channel where if you guys want to donate after a while, just a little bit, feel free, just because that would help the channel out and it would also help me get certain technology to where I can update this. I think I already told a couple people that I might be doing it soon, probably in the next month or 2, something like that. I don't know. But anyways, I'm going to start doing videos very soon where I'm actually going to be kind of breaking them down individually and showing like what they do. And in my view, like who could win and what skill sets they bring to the table. Mr. Heish, I don't know what that says. Sorry. Do you rate Conor Benn? Well, Conor Benn, I think actually is very good. I know he has his upcoming fight with Ryan. I don't know who to fucking favor in that fight. I was going to favor Conor Benn like hands down months ago, but then I seen his last fight against Regis Prograis and he kind of looked like shit. I'm not going to lie. And we both know that they both have been on steroids and I don't know what they're going to look like kind of off of them. And I don't know, man. That's kind of because you don't really know what you're going to get from them. If Conor Benn does pressure him consistently, and Conor Benn is a guy that will throw fucking caution in the wind. He's not a guy that cares, a lot like his father, Nigel Benn. He don't really give a fuck if he gets hit a few times, even from a puncher like Ryan. I think he can take a couple. Ryan is not quite as he's not quite as good of a chin. But the thing is that man, if I see Ryan the same way that I did in the Mario Barrios fight, it's like that's gonna be a hard guy to beat. And Ryan can punch, man. Like Ryan is an A+ puncher. He really is. But Conor Benn is also a good puncher. And also, I think this is his first time back down at 147 for a little bit. Well, is that true? Maybe no, because right, because he fought pro grade at 154, right? That's why everyone was like so weirded out by that fight because like he went up 2 weight classes and he went to like a decision. I don't know. I really don't know what to favor on that fight. I'm gonna have to look. That's so hard because I don't think Connor's been at 147 for a little bit. If I was going to favor anyone early, I'd probably favor Ryan Garcia just because I would assume he's more comfortable at the weight and he also uses his feet more. But I would not be shocked either way that it goes. I really would not. You also don't know what version of Ryan you're going to get. You really don't. You might get the Ryan that showed up against Rolly Romero. You might get the fucking version of Ryan that showed up against Mario Barrios. Who fucking knows? I don't know. But let's see. But I think Conor Benn's like an A- level fighter, debatably. I think it's fair. Let's see here. Does anyone have a dealing Conor Benn is going to pull an upset? I can see Ryan getting hit with something crazy. I could see either way. I wouldn't be shocked at all. Conor is wild. Yeah, he's a little bit wild in the style, which kind of worries me. But Ryan is also someone that has a lot of faults. That's going to be a very interesting fight. That fighting is going to be surprise. No fans don't know what. Yeah, that's a true fight. That's interesting. I don't think either fighter is super high grade level, but they are A grade level in my view at their best, and you just never know what's going to happen. Conor Benn is super dehydrated. Conor Benn should be one. Well, that's also one. I don't know if he's quite 160, but he looks like 154. So that's why I'm kind of like I'm a little bit skeptical about like, are you really like not to 147 right now? Because that's like I don't know. I'm a little bit worried about that to be honest, because that could kind of drain him a little bit. And Ryan is super quick and powerful. So like if Conor Benn is drained at all, that could be a huge fucking problem. So especially if Ryan looked the way he did in the last fight and actually moves. Like that's the only time I've ever seen Ryan Garcia actually have consistent head movement ever. So I mean it was pretty good. Still not fantastic head movement, but at least moved it, straight back and forth. So I'll give it to him. Let me read some more comments here. Let's see. He fought a shot Regis catchweight at 150 and looked, oh, yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's why I'm like, I don't know. Machado John Boxing says Bam needs Inoue more than Inoue needs Bam at the stage. It's been strange to see Bam C-Mac the opposite in the case. Well, I don't agree with that because I think that once again, I think that long-term wise, I think that Inoue could benefit a lot from fighting Bam. But I understand why Inoue at 34 would want to accomplish his dream of unifying 126, especially when he's 34 years old and already clearly not the size of those guys. Like he's going to be doubled in size by some of those guys. So it's going to be interesting. Conor Benn said he won't ever fight at 147 at in a Ring magazine interview. I believe it. Man, that's going to be interesting then. Oof, I don't know. Let's see. Let's see what else we got here. Matado John Boxon says, I found your film reviews to be absolutely exciting and exhilarating. I really do look forward to when you do another one. It's so enjoyable. I can never tell if that motherfucker's joking or not. I will be doing more movie reviews later on. I was eventually going to do a Spider-Man one, but I'm not sure if I'm going to do that one. I'll have to see actually which movie review I'm going to do next. But I do plan to do a lot more movie reviews as well, and eventually video game reviews. But I just got to have time for it because I love reviewing both those things. I just love art in general. So yeah, that's something I will do for sure. Let's see. So Mr. Classic Metal, one of my longtime commenters, he said something very similar that I said. He said, what I find odd is that Rodriguez, talking about Bam, of course, never pursued undisputed in the divisions he campaigned in. Agreed, at least as hard as what he is now. That would have boosted his profile for sure. And I agree, in a way, it doesn't have to come to the U.S. for any of the 126 champs. If they want to fight him, they can go to Japan. Bigger crowds, too. Agreed. Still no news on the Bam versus Medina date. Well, I know it's like for sure November. I thought they actually already confirmed the date. I know for sure it's in November. But I don't know. That I watched Medina fight for the first time the other day. I watched it because I knew that he was that dude is not gonna be Bam at all. That fight is not gonna be. I have almost no interest in that fight at all. The only reason why, well, I do like watching Bam, so I'll still watch it. But it's like I also want to see like how he just. I also want to see his fucking thing after the interview because anyway, I'm sure he'll move up to 126 by then, and then Bam will probably be like, "Yeah, in a way, where you at? Like, please." Anyway, but let's see. Um, if you get more subs / more viewership, would ever be an would you ever be an interviewer for press conferences? Absolutely. Yeah. If I could travel, yeah, no doubt about it. Um I wouldn't mind doing that. That would be very interesting. Um that would be that would be very cool. Although I would say, imagine putting a fucking fighter on the spot. I don't know if I would last long. But yeah, that would be cool. Man. Giovanni Santalin versus Abbas Barao is a very good fight next month. Why does that sound familiar? Giovanni Santalin, Abbas Barao. Oh, is that that one German fighter? I think I know what you're talking about. Is that the guy who lost his eyes not too long ago? Hold on. Let me see. Abbas, motherfucker, come on. Abbas Barao. Yeah, it is. I thought so. Okay. Yeah, same guy lost his eyes. Okay. Let's see. You got some very good takes. Thank you, sir. I try my best. Jaime says you should ask Cheeseburger Nation to promote your channel. How fucking hilarious would that be? Just reviewing so many of his videos in the past, just fucking criticizing, over a lot of his takes and being like, Dante, can you please like help a brother out? Like, please, just takes a look at my fucking channel. Man. Uh, What's your opinion on the 154 division at the moment? I really fucking hate how this money sign is just in the way all the goddamn time. I really do. Let's see. Because there's this money sign that is like directly like on the right fucking side of the comments, and it's like I can never see it. Let me see if I can. Is it gonna? No, it's not gonna do it here. Let me see. Hold on. It's like I'm missing a fucking word. Okay, there we go. What's your opinion on the 154-pound division at the moment? Do you reckon Boots cleans it up? I mean, fucking A. I mean, I think Boots is clearly the most talented there. I think him and Virgil Ortiz are the most talented. 154 has been overrated for quite a while. I mean, when I say it's more talented than what it was during the Jamel Charlo era, in my personal view, people were trying to act like Jamel Charlo was beating these killers. Give me a fucking break. Like the only A-grade fighter he ever fought who was a midget compared to him and really should have lost the first fight, by the way, was against Brian Gastano. Other than that, fought a 20-year sooner. He's knocked out twice against guys that like Jarrett Hurd and some other no name and all these other things. Anyway, but 154, I mean, it's okay. Xander's eyes, I think, is A minus. I don't think he'll ever achieve much after that loss. I think he got beat up really bad. I think that Sebastian Fundora is fine. I think that a big part of the reason why he's so successful is because he's so fucking massive. I don't think he would do as well against, true middleweight A-grade level fighters like Carlos Adams or Janabek especially, who, of course, is no longer champ because he recently got caught on steroids. But anyway, but I mean, I think it's between Boots and Fundora. I wouldn't be surprised if Fundora, beat everyone there. I would probably favor Boots over Fundora just ever so slightly. But I mean, if Fundora won, I wouldn't be shocked. But I'd favor Boots by a good 60% right now. Virgil Ortiz is also another one. I think that Virgil also has a great chance too. I would love to see that fight. Josh Kelly, I mean, let's be fucking real. He ain't having that belt much longer, especially if he fights a legit champion. I think Boots has 2 of the belts right now because of Xander. So I think the only titles that are left are Fundora and fucking Josh Kelly. And I would definitely favor either of them over Josh Kelly, not even a question. So I mean, it is what it is. So that leaves Fundora. I mean, yeah, I would say Boots probably cleans it up, but it could go either way. Let's see. Excuse me. What is your favorite fight you've ever seen that you always go back to? I have a lot of favorite fights, to be quite honest with you. I'm trying to think. Canelo versus Golovkin, that second fight was especially delightful. I love it. I love that one. I'm trying to think of another one. Sugar Ray Leonard versus Tommy Hearns the first go around. I like Usyk versus Fury the first fight as well. I'm trying to think of other ones. Crawford versus Gamboa is actually quite entertaining. What's another one that I really like? Uh, you know, Holyfield versus Michael Moore is kind of that's it's not really as like super entertaining, but it's a good technical battle. Um, Trying to think what else. Roberto Duran versus Sugar Ray Leonard. Uh, Ali versus Joe Frazier is one of the greatest fights I've ever seen. Um, what else? What else is there? Great fights that I've seen. I'm trying to think. Lomachenko versus Haney is a pretty good one too, to be quite honest with you. I'm trying to think of another one here. I feel like there's definitely like a few that I'm missing. Honestly, I kind of have like more fighters that like another good one is the Cotto has a lot of good fights as well. I like Cotto versus Mosley. I don't think that fight was anywhere near as competitive as what people try to make it out to be, but it was fantastic. I thought Cotto had a great performance. Cotto versus some other fighters also. I love watching Cotto a lot. Um, who's another fighter that I love watching? Pacquiao Marquez also are two great fights. Those are fantastic. Ward versus Kovalev the first time around. Yeah, no, they fantastic. There's probably some other fights, Cotto versus Mayweather as well. Maidana versus certain guys, Maidana versus Mayweather, especially the first go around. That's a great one. Danny Garcia versus Lucas Matisse. There's a few others that I'm sure that I'm forgetting. But anyway, let's see. Let's see. Let's see. I got let's see. Hold on. I think 168 fight division is super good division. I think it's more talented now than probably what it was like, when there was that little lapse there after Canelo kind of cleaned it out. Yeah, because you got Christian and Bailey, who's like anywhere from B plus to A minus. Who I thought beat Lester Martinez, by the way. You also have I'm trying to think who else. You have Pacheco, or Pacheco. I think it's Pacheco, my bad. That one like tall Mexican dude who's pretty good. I'm trying to think who else. There's like I think Lester Martinez is there too. Pretty talented. So yeah, it's pretty good. It's definitely one of the more upcoming talented divisions for sure. Canelo could still maybe get a couple good fights in. Who knows? But let's see. I got Fundora stopping Boots. I would have Boots probably beating him, but I won't be shocked either way. I really want it. I just think Fundora at times is a little bit too hittable. And I think although his power is good, I don't think it's quite good enough to keep Boots off of him. I think Fundora has like A minus to A grade level power. And I think the fighters that he stops, although his power does seem to be improving, I will say that. Because I think his confidence has grown a little bit. I think that he also kind of beat a Tsimzu that was a little bit more wore down. And I think that he also beat a Keith Thurman that clearly was nowhere near the same. And it's not like Thurman ever had a chin of granite anyway. So I mean, or a body of granite either. But anyway, we'll see. Fundora has so much momentum right now. I don't think he's stopping. Yeah, it kind of depends on who he fights. I don't think he's going to last that long. There are certain fighters that I'd take a look at him, and they're kind of more successful because of their size. And I think Fundora definitely has certain skills. Don't get me wrong, but I think that if you put him in the ring against a guy that's like 6'1" that can actually compete with his weight and size, I think it's going to be a lot different. But we'll see. The problem is that there's just no one there to really compete with him there. So I mean, I don't know, other than Virgil Ortiz and what the fuck is his name? Duran Butenis. I don't know if there's much else. So yeah. But let's see. Duran is a super entertaining boxer. Yes, and extraordinarily skilled. Very skilled. Very entertaining fighter. Let's see. Yeah, Canelo versus DGG2 is my favorite big fight of all time. That rivalry reminds me of my teenage years. Yeah, same. I was a teenager actually when that fight happened. I don't know if you were as well, Mr. Imi, but I was I in high school when that happened? Maybe it was a little bit after because I know when Cotto and Canelo fought, I was in high school. I think that was like my senior year. I think I was 18 when that happened. Anyway, well, let's see. Zaya's got 2 belts without fighting any top contenders. I mean, he fought Barral, but let's be real. I don't know if I really consider him an A grade level fighter. But yeah, I kind of agree with that. And don't get me wrong, Zayas is talented. He's just not like, on the level of a Boots. But anyway, Canelo is GGG, is Hall of Famers. It's a privilege to watch it. Absolutely. Khan versus Maidana goes unnoticed. Great fight, to be honest. Absolutely. That was probably the only fight I've ever seen Khan take that amount of punishment. And his chin was actually able to withstand. He didn't even get knocked down in that fight. I was shocked. Like, Khan usually, when he gets hit by those shots, eventually, especially as consistently as what he did, Maidana's a tough SOB. He was not quite as good back then or as big back then as what he would be later on. I think that if they had fought again, well, Khan still could have won just because he's so quick. But Khan makes a lot of defensive mistakes. That's another part of the reason why he's so fast. Because, and that's another one thing I'll say about Inoue is this. Inoue is very skilled, but he's got to watch out because, kind of like a Roy Jones Jr. or some other people who are that athletically talented and so much faster and at times stronger than their opponents are just that much more skilled as well. Sometimes he'll like throw a punch and then immediately take another hand down, instead of keeping it up. He's got to really watch out for that. That is one thing that Jesse could take advantage of because I think Jesse, as an all-around defensive fighter, one could debate that he's a little bit more better defensively than Inoue, but we'd have to see. Anyway, but let's see. I feel like fighters need to start fighting more unknown names in the sport because a lot of guys don't get any chances to make a name even in losses nowadays. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, yeah, I agree with that, especially if they have like a good record. But it's very difficult because I think, especially after the Mayweather era, I think a lot of people want that undefeated record, and I think a lot of people want the biggest money fights at times without putting in the work that Mayweather did. And kind of like any great athlete, after they leave, they want to be like them, and they kind of want to take that career path and take a similar approach. And I don't think it's quite working as well. And I think it's created a lot of bad things because now you have a lot of these fighters that are getting like, because we shouldn't be having fighters like, Virgil Ortiz, Duran Bucenis, or Gervonta Tank Davis to where they're getting to like 20, 30 something and 0, and they haven't even won a title yet, and they're highly regarded as championship level status, or they're like 37 and 0, like Tank Davis, and they just not fucking fighting anybody, other than like Ryan Garcia and Frank Martin. Like, that shouldn't be happening. And like Duran Bucenis is like what, 30 something and 0 right now. And the only two fighters that I fucking know of that he's fought that were decent quality were like Stan Ionis, who's like a B grade level fighter, and Xander Zayas. Like, that's an issue. So like that should not be happening. Anyway. Ooh. Let's see. True, atmosphere gives unknown people talent, but sometimes if they bigger name, best and they get no recognition. I agree with that. I'm Josh Shiraz, WBO champion 168. Somehow, LOL, reckon Canelo or Embiid could outwork him. But he's an interesting case because, to be honest with you, I thought that he lost to Adams. I was not super impressed with him in that fight. He's talented. I don't know if he's quite as talented as what some other people allege, but I think we'll see how talented he truly is when he fights. If Canelo looks really good against Mbili, I'd like to see that fight. I don't know if Hamza Shiraz. I don't know how far he's going to go. I think he's very good, but I don't think he's going to go quite as far as what some of the other guys want him to go. He's someone that is not extraordinarily multidimensional from what I've seen, and I think that will eventually bite him. But we'll see. Oh my God, that reminds me. I used to always want to see another Castano fight, but he went MIA for how good he was. Yeah, he was pretty solid. That would have been interesting, but I don't think Jamel Charlo would have. I think it would have been too risky. And plus, I think Castano, I think it would have been interesting if maybe he had not been stopped, but he got stopped. And to be fair to Mr. Jamel Charlo, he did make the right adjustments, even though the second fight was very competitive as well. Those Argentines, boy, I tell you what, they got some talented ass athletes. Anyway, let's see. Pandora has massively improved his skills after the Mendoza law. I do agree with that. How many Southpaws has Haney actually fought? Regis Prograis, Vasyl Lomachenko. But to be fair, those guys are kind of smaller than him. Brian Norman wasn't a Southpaw. I know for sure Lomachenko and Prograis were, though. I'm pretty sure Prograis was, right? Prograis is a Southpaw. Maybe he is a right-hander. I don't fucking remember. But I think that the one for sure, obviously, is Lomachenko. Other than that, I think Prograis, and other than that, I'm not quite sure. But let's see. Marquez versus Morales, amazing fight. Did he fight Morales? Oh, I think I might know what you're talking about. Well, that was Israel Vasquez. I'm thinking about someone else. Because if you're talking about Juan Manuel Marquez, I don't think he ever fought Eric Morales. I think Barrera and Morales fought, and Marquez eventually fought Barrera, but I don't think he ever fought Morales. But yeah. Because apart from Loma, I can't think of any others. Like I said, maybe Regis Prograis, but other than that, I can't think of any others. Eric Morales versus Marco Antonio fight was yeah, okay, there you go. I thought so. I think Regis and Joe. Yeah, he did fight Jojo Diaz, but let's also be Jojo is not. And Devin got hurt a couple times in that fight, by the way, against Jojo Diaz. But that was also one of his things. Thanks, I completely forgot. No problem. That year that Haney didn't fight really threw my memory off. You're all good. Too much boxer history to remember. You good, Mr. Miyagi? Yeah, no, for sure. I'd be forgetting some names and stuff happens too. Not for real. I meant Barrera. Yeah, no problem, man. I thought so. Yeah, because I was like, what? They fought? But I know that like many, I always get the names confused because there was like that one Mexican dude. I think he's dead now, unfortunately. But his name was like Israel Vasquez. Lost an eye eventually, and he had like these crazy fights, against this other Mexican fighter. I don't remember his name though. Anyway, but let's see. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I can mention. Let me go back to the Crawford video that I had just because I know there'll probably be some other points that I want to mention, and I might get off this here in like 20, 30 minutes. But let's see. Well, I need to drink water as well. Whenever I talk too long, man, my throat just starts like burning up. I don't know why. I have too much congestion. I just do. Anyway, let's see. I see another comment. Let me open this up. There we go. That was good. Okay, let's see. Would you say Shakur is boring to watch? I'd say you're a boxing purist, so you'd find it interesting. I'll say this. I find almost every style entertaining to watch because I'm someone that, I would claim myself to be a boxing aficionado and a boxing purist. So I can watch styles that probably most people are not willing to watch. That being stated, it's not like I'm going to be watching Shakur Stevenson on repeat. I will state this. I think that when you take a look at guys like Usyk, Inoue, and Crawford, I do think in terms of the level of entertainment that they're always going to be looked at as a little bit different. I do think to be the most amount of entertaining, and it's not that he's not entertaining because his skill set is just off the charts. But when you take a look at certain guys like Crawford and Usyk and Inoue, like other guys of this generation, it's just a different type of watch because not only can they dominate a fight off of skills, but it's like they can do it in a way to where they can actually stop their opponent. And I've also seen this in UFC because, like, one of the greatest fighters of all time, probably my vote for the greatest UFC fighter of all time, George St. Pierre, debatably anyway. Many people eventually were calling him boring because after he got knocked out by Matt Serra, which was a humongous upset, by the way, because that was the winner of the Ultimate Fighter, and many people didn't even believe he won that. And the best champion in the world, or one of them, goes in and fucking loses by first round knockout. So crazy. But George St. Pierre, after a while, because he kind of changed his style after that, he out wrestled a lot of opponents, and people were calling him boring. And I think George, because of how many great opponents he beat, he's looked at as a little bit different. And also the early part of his career, he was actually stopping guys like, Matt Hughes and, and other guys, and beat a lot of great fighters like BJ Penn. So it's a little bit different. But I think that no matter the sport, if you're kind of looked at as a little bit more of a grindy style or someone that, is more of you only connect to purists, it's a little bit harder to watch. And I'm not saying I love watching Shakur. He's someone that I'm always going to love watching. But I won't lie to I won't lie to you. He's not going to be someone that I watch as much as Inoue or Usyk or Crawford. It's not going to happen because those guys, whenever I watch them, not only can they dominate in a way to where they're clearly beating those fighters, but it's I feel that they could stop them. And I mean, I think it'd be a little bit different if Shakur also was beating guys that were clearly bigger than him. But I think that he finally reached fighters similar in size when he finally reached 135. He's not someone that really is natural 130 or 126 because he's bigger than everyone else there. So, I mean, the point is that the Teofimo fight is definitely an entertaining watch because the fact that he dominated him, I mean, I kind of predicted him to dominate him for anyone that watched that, my prediction video on that, because I just thought Teofimo was all wrong for him, or I thought Shakur was all wrong for Teofimo, excuse me. But Shakur is still a very entertaining fighter. And him versus Haney would be very interesting. I don't think it'd be as interesting as what some other people would predict because I honestly think Shakur will get the better of Haney, even if it's at 147. I think Haney's a decent amount bigger than Shakur. I don't think he has anything else over him. I mean, I guess he has reach as well, but other than that, there's nothing else. He doesn't have speed over him. I mean, I guess he has power. Literally every advantage that Haney would have over Shakur is maybe tactics in terms of just moving around all the time. But it's like, what is Haney going to hit Shakur with consistently? And Haney is a great fighter, but I don't see his skill set as up there as what some people say. Haney is a very good fighter, but I almost seen him get outboxed by a 37-year-old 126 like pound Lomachenko. I mean, it is what it is. And then also, he didn't look super great against Ryan Garcia. I don't think his skill set is really comparable to guys like Shakur. I think that Haney, that it's only a matter of time that he faces someone that's similar in size. And I think that once he does, that can actually compete with his skill set. I don't think he's going to look as good. And I think that's a part of the reason why he did not look as good against Ryan Garcia. But anyway, let's see. Really want to see Haney Shakur. Yeah, I do as well. Would be a crazy chess match. I don't think it'd be as much of a crazy chess match as what people think. And I could be wrong about that. I just don't see it. I think that Shakur would clearly outbox him. I think that he'd get the better of him. I think that the only way is if Haney's able to keep a distance and is able to surprise Shakur and kind of, impress him with his size and weight. If that does not happen, I don't see that fight being that competitive. And to be honest, I think it'd maybe be a bit more competitive than the Teofimo fight. Maybe 8-4, maybe just because Haney knows how to use his feet. Other than that, and I'm not saying that I think Teofimo would beat Haney, but I think there are certain things that Teofimo does better than Haney. Haney's someone that he's one of those guys that is, to me, he beats a lot of guys because of his style and also because of his size. But my theory kind of proved correct when I saw that against Ryan Garcia. He has a lot of flaws. And and although he is someone that is skilled, don't get it twisted, he's not quite as skilled, I think, as what many people think. Like, he's not, in terms of pound per pound, he's not really a top 10 pound per pound skilled fighter, in my view. He's really more of a top 20. Because if we were to compare him to guys like Inoue and Usyk, and like, it's not even close. Crawford, not even close. I don't even think he's as all around skilled as Duran Butenis or Virgil Ortiz, my view of it. But anyway, what countries produce the best boxers? Name 3. Well, I think the USA you definitely have to put up there. After that, I think you'd probably have to say, I don't know if I'd say Britain. I mean, they're popular, but I don't know if they produce enough. But I'd say Russia, they're up there, and Mexico. I'd probably say those 3. Britain would be close. Puerto Rico's close as well. Ukraine at this current day and age, maybe Kazakhstan. A few others. I can't really name a lot of others. But yeah, those would probably be the main ones. Uzbekistan would probably be within the top 10 as well. Japan, I kind of forgot about them. I guess they're coming out with some more impressive ones. So yeah, but America, I think, would have to be number 1. Then after that, Russia or Mexico. But yeah, let's see. Postal versus Crawford was a boring fight. Well, the reason why that was a boring fight was at least compared to certain standards, was because Postal just didn't do shit. And Postal, although he's talented, he's someone that's a very straight up and down, very stiff, not, kind of has to have you stand still, in order for him to throw. And Crawford just showed that he was that much better. So, yeah, I don't blame Crawford for that. I don't think Crawford is super entertaining, just my opinion. I find him very entertaining because I find him not only skilled and he can stop guys. I love watching Crawford. The entertainment value is never the issue with me. He's one of my favorite fighters to watch ever. And also keep in mind, he comes from my hometown of Omaha, Nebraska. So, I mean, that comes with the territory. I actually went to go see his fight against Yuriorkis Gamboa when I was like 15 with my father. So we had a great time with that. But yeah, let me tell you what, the Latino crowd went out for that fight, even though Gamboa was Cuban. Jesus, I've seen a whole bunch of anyone who knows Omaha, Nebraska. We have a big Mexican population here, just a big Latino population here in South Omaha in general. They fucking went out. They were, you could hear them all the fucking way across the stadium, whistles and everything. But yeah, they went out. They go out for their boxing. I'll give them that. But anyway, but yeah, Crawford was always entertaining to me. That was never the issue with me. It's just that Crawford's resume to me is kind of lacking a little bit in certain terms, but he's a greatly entertaining fighter from my view. Even though Crawford is amazing, A plus in skills. I agree. S, agreed. Crawford never fought young fighters like Virgil Ortiz and Duran Ennis. That would have been interesting. I mean, he fought Victor Postol, I guess, but like, I understand what you're saying though, because like, I don't think that it would have been interesting to see him fight like a prime Virgil Ortiz or Ennis. I mean, I would have bet on him to beat him, but it would have been interesting. I understand what you're saying. Um, let's see. Crawford versus Manny is what needed to happen. And then I feel people will not have doubters in his career. I think, just for me personally, Pacquiao, what Crawford really would have had to have done, in my view, is probably just have more A grade level names. But it's also hard for me, just for me personally, because Crawford is someone that, he's 5'8" with like a 74-inch reach. You're gonna have the physical advantage over most guys. Now, Canelo and Spence, that's cool, maybe post style, but it's like a lot of those other guys, you're kind of already bigger than, So I mean, but anyone who knows me knows I kind of already have that standard. I would have loved to have seen Crawford versus a prime Kilbrook, Danny Garcia, maybe a Robert Girl. Like I would have loved to see those names. I would have loved to see Crawford fight guys like Cotto and maybe a Pacquiao, but I think Pacquiao would have been a bit too small, probably. Although Pacquiao, I understand that he beat Cotto and some of the other guys, but I think that combined with the style and the size, I just think it would have been a bit too much. I would have loved to see some of those other fights. I would have loved to have seen him fight Lara, maybe, or maybe even a Canelo that would have been younger at 160. I'm not saying it would have turned out any different, but it would have been interesting. Maybe a Golovkin, someone at 154, Duran, Virgil, someone like that. I would have not been interested in Jamel Charlo fight really because I don't think that fight would have been close. Anyway, let's see. Haney versus Shakur will be super boring. Well, I think it'll be a fight that Shakur will probably clearly win. I don't think it's going to be quite as dominant as the Teofimo fight because I think Teofimo is just too defensively irresponsible and he doesn't always use his feet to the best of his ability in certain times. But anyway, how would have Haney versus Sandro Martin have gone? I like Sandro Martin. He actually is a little bit underrated. I think that Haney probably would have got the edge. I just think that Martin is one of those fighters that also he's one of those styles that is like super grading. It's also like he is very defensive. He's someone that boxes very technically, but he also at times does not throw enough. And I think Haney probably would have just beat him at his own game. I think he would have been a little bit too strong, a little bit too quick, and a little bit too active. But I think it would have been one of those fights where it's like, man, fuck, like I don't want to fight that guy again. Anyway. Why guys like Canelo, Inoue, and Usyk are consistently fighting younger guys? Well, I'm not quite sure if I would count Inoue as a white guy. Oh, I thought it says wild guys. Okay, I don't know. I don't know why I thought it said white guys. All right, wild guys like Canelo, Inoue, and Usyk consistently fighting younger guys. They have, yeah. To be fair, not always A plus level young guys, but I understand what you're talking about. But let's see. Bob Arum did say that Pacquiao was too much for Crawford. I heard it the other way around, in all honesty. But anyway, let's see. I'm from the UK. I had a feeling that you were from the UK because as soon as I heard you say, do you rank Connor Ben? That's usually like the UK version way of saying like, where do you rank that person, or like, do you think he's good? So that was interesting because it's not usually something that we put in that way over here in America. But it's great to have you. Let's see. I'm from the UK. I went to see Bud versus Ricky Burns, and I was amazed how easily he won. Was actually terrifying. Well, Ricky Burns, in my view, was never really like an A grade level fighter. I thought he was okay. And that's also another fighter that the Bud fans always try to like promote, and they're like, "Well, he beat Ricky Burns." It's like Ricky Burns is okay, dude, but it's like other than Roman Martinez, he never beat anybody, man. Like, I'm sorry, it is what it is. But that was the first time that Omar ever heard of Crawford was when he finally won a title. Then after that, I think was when he fought Gamboa. Then after that, his career just shot off because I think he was actually slightly an underdog in that fight. Gamboa was expected to win because he was this big Cuban guy, but Gamboa also was just massively, first of all, not only just not as skilled as Crawford, although he did give him his toughest fight, debatably, but although to be fair, Crawford was still a little bit more inexperienced at that time. But anyways, that overall being stated, Crawford, not only was he more skilled, he also was just massively bigger. I mean, he had like 9 inches of reach over him, clearly the weight advantage and the height. I mean, That's why I say it. Like, to me, that's, that does have to be factored. Anyway, but let's see. Shit, man, I gotta blow my nose, y'all. Sorry about that. Where is my Kleenex? There we go. Whew. Sorry. Let's see. So Mr. Miyagi says Pacquiao's a bad. Well, this guy actually says morbid C999 says Pacquiao is a bad style matchup for Crawford. It would have been interesting. I think that Pacquiao would have actually been more of a bad style matchup for Spence. I think that Crawford may have been a little bit too big and a little bit too maneuverable for Pacquiao. I think that it's kind of the reverse. But if Pacquiao somehow pulled off the upset, I wouldn't have been shocked because he's an all time great fighter. One of my top 5 to top 10 fighters of all time, hands down. Pacquiao is one of the few fighters of all time I'd have as a lock for top 10 all time. But let's see. I wish Junto came out a bit faster in the Inoue fight. It gave me the same feels when the MJ fight, but I believe I want to go the full distance, and Inoue is super sharp in both fights. Yeah, I think Junto is a little bit too careful. I think he could have did a bit more, and I think he probably believes that after the fight as well. The problem with MJ Akhmadaliev, and I noticed this also with Madrimov, they're both Uzbekistani fighters, and you can tell that they have that the new moving in and out, feinty, like European style. And it works for guys like Lomachenko and Usyk because they actually know how to be active. And this has lost so many boxers fights. You can't just be defensive. You also have to put on the pace. And if you don't know how to do that, you're going to lose a lot of your fights. That's just how it is. You have to create your own offense. You have to create opportunities. And if you don't do that, you're going to lose so many big fights. I've seen so many fighters lose because they were just too defensive and did not throw. MJ Akhmadaliev and Madrimov, I don't think they really have the style to where they create a whole lot of. I mean, they create opportunities, but they just don't know how to put on the pace. Their shit is more like feint, move and then throw a 1-2. But they're not a guy that mixes it up well enough. They confuse you with their foot, and their foot movement and their feints and all this other stuff. Like it looks flashy, but after a while you can time that, and that's why Inoue beat MJ so easily. Because Inoue is a guy that can mix it up. He can create his own offense and his own pace. He can fight more defensive. He can fight any way. MJ's a guy to where I think he has to kind of lull you to sleep. He has to kind of trick you and to have the smoke and mirrors in front of you with all these feints and movements, kind of like Madrimov. But after a while, once you see past that, it's game over if you're an elite level fighter. So I mean, it's they would have to add another layer to the game that I just don't think they have. But anyway. Both Portering and BuzzFeed were giving Crawford major issues. That is true. I think one area in a way can improve in is slip countering, pull counters in the pocket because featherweights are going to be on top of home where he goes up. That's definitely a good point. In a way, the two main things that a few things. The main things that worry me about him, especially moving up, when he defends, it's more of a high guard and he'll kind of just stand there for a minute at times. Although he will be more defensively responsible, obviously he knows that he uses feet. He has good feet. But he'll sometimes, because he's not used to a fighter really hurting him like that, he'll kind of just stand there. As I watched the David Picasso fight the other day, and although I think at times it was necessary because you don't want a bigger fighter wearing you down, so you need to stand up to them. Sometimes he kind of stands in the pocket a bit too much, and it's he'll just be in the high guard, and shots will slip through there. So he needs to watch out because Bruce Carrington, for example, he's got a very tight defense at his best. And I think Inoue's going to have to watch out for that. Also, another thing is that, he has a bad habit of pulling hands away from his face when he throws exchanges. He has a very bad habit of keeping both hands down and needs to watch out for that. Because at 126, where maybe the power is not going to be felt as much, they're not going to be as afraid to throw back with you. So, I mean, he needs to watch out for that. But anyway, but let's see. Facts. Imagine Bud and Floyd's era. You reckon he would have held his own against Floyd and them guys? I think he would have held his own against a lot of those guys. Yeah, I think that. And that's also another thing is and this is probably the last little bit that I'll talk about. Before I move on to the comment section again. Yeah, I think Crawford would have held his own. This is also my thing because whenever certain people they want to mention a fighter. I've been on so many of these LDBC and the media channels, and they're man, Usyk would have stood no chance against Holyfield or Tyson or some of these other guys. But then when it comes to Crawford, even before he beat Spence, man, he would have gave Mayweather problems. All these, it's like, well, come on, like Usyk is a guy that would have given a lot of those guys problems if not beat him. So if you're talking about guys like Inoue, Usyk, Crawford, yeah, I think they all would have, held, in any time. It just depends on who we're talking about. Now, do I think that Crawford would have beat Floyd? I don't know if there's any person that I would favor over Floyd that would have fought at 147 or under. Um, what I will state is that Crawford is one of the few that would be a 50-50 guy to possibly beat Floyd. It'd be right there. Who do I think is more skilled between the two? Floyd. But Floyd is also not really as naturally big as Crawford. He's about 10 pounds lighter, has a 2-inch reach disadvantage. That would have been a fight to see. I would have loved to have seen that. But do I think he could have held his own against a lot of those guys? Oh, yeah. No doubt about it. No doubt. But anyway. USA, Mexico, UK, Japan, I rank boxing. Yeah, no, for sure. Boxing fans. Well, if we're talking about like the best boxing fans, USA to a degree, but Mexico, they might be number one. Puerto Rico as well. UK, big fan base there. Russia's pretty big too. And a few others maybe. Maybe Australia, and the Philippines. They're kind of all up there. But yeah. Oh man. I'm losing my voice, yo. Let's see. E-Dash says, for David Benavidez, what is your pick if you would pick any fight to make happen? Canelo at 168, better Beaver 175, Beaver 170. That's interesting. I don't know if there were talks about him fighting Beaver 170. Maybe mental type 175, I don't know. Or Opatai at 200 or someone else. I'd say better Beef since I feel Beevil's duck trail. And document trilogy is what he's talking about there, I believe. I would love to see David Benavidez fight better Beaver Beevil. I think that the Beevil fight is the one that everyone is kind of looking for because he has all the belts. But I mean, if you can get that fight, better Beef. And I like Benavidez a lot. But this is why I always say I never give a fighter extra credit for being willing to allegedly fight everybody until you're fighting guys similar in size. Because anyone can beat up on guys that are like, several inches shorter than you and, not as lengthy as you, and you're way more than them, and like a lot of great fighters, even if they're, maybe not quite as skilled, if they're A grade, skilled like De La Hoya, yeah, you can beat up on guys like Chavez. That's cool. But what can you do against like Trinidad and Mosley and those guys? Not much is what it proves. So, I mean, but when we talk about, David Benavidez, all of a sudden he's a lot more careful now that he has something to lose, which is why I never go out to say that, oh, this guy's willing to fight everybody when they don't have a belt or when they, when they're more desperate. You get to see what a person truly wants when they have all the power. That's when you truly get to see. But anyway, the fight that I'd love to see, better Beef. Would love to see that fight. If not Beevil, better Beef. Opataya, I think that he may need another fight at cruiserweight for that. I think that Opatai is pretty big compared to him. I'm not going to lie. I don't think Benavidez is really a natural cruiserweight. So I think he's more of a light heavyweight. So that's a pretty brutal fight, but I would love to see it either way. But better Beaver Beevil. Let's see. No, Canelo versus Benavidez. Sadly, Benavidez is way too well. I mean, at 168, it's fine. I think Canelo very clearly was waiting for that fight to kind of die out. There's no reason for that fight to really happen. I mean, Benavidez at 168, I don't even think he can make that anymore. And I don't see why Canelo would make that fight unless Benavidez can actually unify all the 175 belts and maybe Canelo was like, okay, well, maybe I can, fight at 175. We'll see. I don't know. Maybe then. But I just don't see it happening. I mean, Benavidez was always way too big for Canelo anyway. And, Canelo recently lost his last fight against Crawford. I mean, is anyone really interested in that fight anymore? I'm not really. So anyway. Canelo was going to retire. He probably should soon. Best fight, Benavidez is Opataya. They both hype names. I would love Better Beef as well because Better Beef and Beevil are 2 pound per pound names. And all of a sudden Benavidez is a little bit more tentative, which I get it. But that's why I say I'm very tentative to call who I say is willing to fight everybody until they finally have something to lose. That's why I gave Usyk and Inoue a whole lot of credit because they're willing to fight everybody when they, actually had something to lose. At least, during their peak of their career. I don't know. I don't know what's happening with Bivol and Artur. I don't know either. I mean, it kind of seems to me like Bivol was avoiding it for a time. Now I'm not quite sure. because it seems like he's getting back in it, but I don't know. Let's see. But let's see. I might read some more comments in my video here, but let's see. Crawford said he didn't want to fight Floyd because he was on his way out. I always ask about why didn't Floyd fight Crawford, because Crawford is older than Canelo, and Canelo fought him at 23. Well, I think that Floyd by that time was done. Floyd actually did mention once that he wanted to fight Crawford, but it was when Crawford was at 135. So I think Floyd would have fought him by the time that Crawford beat someone like Spence. Fuck no. I think that Floyd is like, I'm too old for that, and that dude is one of the few guys that at this time probably could beat my ass because I'm just too old for that. There's no way. The Floyd at his absolute best, I'm not 100% sure if he'd beat Crawford combined with the skill and size. So shit. Anyway, but let's see. All right, Benavidez is fighting an unknown fighter in December. So much for all the talk of him avoiding fights, or him being avoided. Yeah, agreed. Anyway, let's read some more of these comments, and then that might be about it, unless anyone else has something else to say. But let's see. So Machado John Boxon from my Crawford video, he says, talking about his resume, he says, for a regular fighter, good. For a guy who's been on the pound for pound list for 10 years, really bad, honestly. Actually, that's a fair point. For some, once again, this point that Crawford's been blackballed is complete horse shit. He's been on the top 5 pound for pound list for literally like the past 10 fucking years. And fought a whole lot of B grade level fighters, to be honest with you. So agreed. But let's see. Let's see if there's any other points I need to address here before I. Let's see. People are going to think that I'm blowing smoke up your ass when they read this, but I do admire your content. You're very methodical and articulate, and I look forward to being a member. Thank you very much, Mr. St. Don. Let's see. But anyway, that pretty much is about. Anyway, but let's see. Let's see. St. Don's a fool, man. I tell you what, this fucking guy. All right, let's see what else I got. Okay, that's actually an interesting heavyweight one, and then I might actually end on the one on that there. But anyway, all right, so let's read this comment here because I know. Very Guapo says, B still Floyd did a catch. Wait for Canelo, Crawford, and Floyd will be good. People don't talk about that much in the media. Yeah, Canelo actually was at 152. Now, apparently, Canelo stated that he could fight there. But that always was very strange to me. Like, why? Like, I don't understand why that wasn't 154. Apparently, Canelo picked 152. That was really awkward. And I know that there's been like certain people that are like, well, Canelo said it was okay. It's like, right. He said it was okay, but come on, like, really 152? Like, people mention catch rates all the time, and they don't ever mention that Canelo was at 152. So, anyway, but let's see. Let's see. This person, B Wayne A7, I met him on my channel for a while. He says, in my opinion, I think the 60s, along with the Tyson era, is the weakest era compared to the Holmes, Klitschko, in today's era. Outside of Liston, who was there? H. Cooper, Patterson, Doug Jones, Zora, Foley, Williams, Terrell, Ellis, Chuavo, Wepner. But supposedly this is the weakest era of the heavyweights. It's comical and pure prideful delusion. Ignorance is truly bliss with American boxing fans. Another great breakdown nonetheless. Thank you, sir. I've already stated this, and I'm only talking about like probably for thank you for your talks, bro. Yeah, no problem, G. Probably going to be around for about 10 more minutes, to be honest, and then I got to call it a night because I got to go to work tomorrow. But thank y'all so much for sticking around. And, once again, I will be doing a donation thing, very soon. If y'all want to support it, feel free to. And I also will be doing more movie reviews and breakdowns a little bit later on. So keep out in mind for that, as well as more videos that I've been doing. But I've already said this for the heavyweight division. And I kind of end this off with Usyk. No, this was a very talented heavyweight era because when you talk about not only Wilder, but Fury and AJ and Joseph Parker and Andrew Ruiz and Luis Ortiz and like these guys would last in a lot of eras. They would. I'm not claiming that they would always win, but they would be competitive. When we talk about the three most weak eras for the past 60 years in the heavyweight division, you're talking about the Mike Tyson era, not even a question, the Larry Holmes era, and the Klitschko era. That's the three eras that you're talking about. But that era ended once Klitschko was defeated by Fury, and then once Wilder and AJ showed up. And people, these same guys were talking shit about how Wilder was going to become a top 10 heavyweight of all time. And then all of a sudden Wilder ends up fucking losing. And all of a sudden, oh, it's a weak era. Especially once Usyk proved to be the best. No, that ended up being worse. It would have even been different if Fury would have beat Usyk, because then they could just go on the regular bullshit that oh, he's a cheater, all sort of bullshit. But which of course there was never any concrete evidence for that. There was never any evidence for that at all for anyone who had any common sense. But I mean, the point is that when Usyk did it and they couldn't allege any of that bullshit, and he beat AJ and Fury, something that no other heavyweight was able to do in the past era, and beat all the super heavyweights for his size. That was when it became worse, because then he automatically became a top 20 fighter of all time and surpassed guys like Evander Holyfield. That's when they had to do damage control and be like, oh, well, this is the weakest era of all time. Like, please. But remember, Crawford is top 5, and don't get it twisted. Love that he defeated Spence and Canelo, but he was even top 10 all time when he defeated Spence. And the rest of his career being guys like Aegis Kaviaskis or guys like that. Like, please. Anyways, that pretty much about it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. It was lovely talking to y'all. I appreciate, love every one of y'all. Thank you all for tuning in. Keep a lookout for my videos. I will be doing more breakdown videos. Also more movie reviews a little bit later on. I don't know when my next movie review will be. I may do one over Obsession. I'm not quite sure. I also will be doing, if you want to be a member on my channel, if you want to support it a little bit, donate or anything like that, feel free. But anyways, that pretty much about it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I got to call it a night for now, but thank y'all. Love y'all. Thank you very much. Peace out to the LDBC. Oh, absolutely. Big fans of them over here. Always support their bullshit work. But anyways, that pretty much is about it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Love y'all. I'll talk to you all later.